It's been 45 years since that unlucky guy, Sung-woo, was dragged off to another world. When he started his journey, he was only level 1 and had absolutely nothing to his name. Sung-woo just kept grinding away, killing monsters to get stronger, and after 45 years, he finally hit level 255. Today is the day that long journey finally comes to an end, because the Supreme Demon King has officially been defeated by Sung-woo and his 3 teammates. Right after they finished off the demon, a beautiful woman with hair as golden as a flowing stream appeared, her voice sounding incredibly sweet. "My heroes, I believed in you all. I knew you would defeat the Supreme Demon King." That woman was the goddess Gael, but as she smiled that sweet smile at him, Sung-woo's eyes went dark. He coldly challenged her. "Are you actually smiling right now?" "What?" The smile on Gael's face froze for a second. She asked back mechanically. Sung-woo stood up, stepped closer, and repeated the question, his tone even more hostile. "Are you really smiling? You granted others special abilities, weapons, and the strongest teams, but you didn't give me a damn thing." As he spoke, Sung-woo's hand went straight to the hilt of his sword. Gael could tell by his current rage that he was fully capable of drawing his blade and slashing her, so she hurriedly explained, well, I didn't have enough divine power left because I summoned too many people from other worlds. She would have been better off staying silent." Gael's excuse just made Sung-woo even angrier. He roared, "Do you want me to cut you down?" If his teammates hadn't held him back, Sung-woo probably would have actually done it. Gael scrambled to get away from him, looking at Sung-woo like he was a rabid dog. Even she was shocked that he had become powerful enough to cross the line like this. She couldn't help but wonder how someone who started out as a normal human could ever become this strong. After putting a safe distance between them, Gael cleared her throat a few times to pretend she was calm, then asked, "Anyway, I want to reward you all. What is it that you want?" "I want to go to the next battlefield, but I hope there's a grand and logical reason for going there." His first teammate, who looked like a goblin warrior, replied, "I don't really want anything because I've already been on an amazing adventure with some amazing teammates." The second teammate spoke up with sparkling eyes. Sung-woo immediately got annoyed and pinched his cheek. "Aren't you embarrassed saying something like that?" "What do you mean? Why would I be embarrassed? You guys really are the best teammates in the world." He stuck to his guns, determined. The last teammate, an archer, said he wanted the power to travel to any space he pleased, and he also wanted to keep the ability to use his weapons. Gael listened and stared at him with a skeptical look. "I can help you with the dimension hopping. But as for the weapons, that's a bit ... May I hear the reason why?" "Obviously, to start a revolution, what else?" the guy replied excitedly, his face beaming with idealism. "A revolution for the oppressed and marginalized races. Let the light of revolution spread across different dimensions and aim our weapons at the oppressors." Hearing this, Sung-woo nodded repeatedly. "That's so like you, Pink Spirit." "Heh, thanks for understanding me so well," Pink Spirit replied. "Don't you two encourage each other?" Gael thought to herself, but she didn't dare say it out loud for fear of Sung-woo giving her another piece of his mind. Finally, she wanted to hear Sung-woo's wish. The man who hadn't asked for anything yet, did he have a passion for money or items? Sung-woo already had tons of those. Things like power and fame were things he could get whenever he wanted. So Sung-woo didn't even care about them. For a man who had reached level 255, capable of crossing through time and space and conquering worlds, it felt like he already had everything. Thinking about this, Sung-woo instinctively grew nostalgic for his past. Back then, when he was first dragged to this world as a level 1 hero, Sung-woo was a mess, weak as a kitten, and his stomach was growling loudly. He found a small restaurant and tried to order food just like everyone else. The taste of that first decent meal after arriving in this world made him want to cry. It was an experience Sung-woo would never forget. "Mr. Hero? Sung-woo?" Gael's voice rang out right in his ear, pulling him back to reality. "Are you thinking about the past?" Sung-woo grabbed the finger that was poking his cheek and grumbled, "Yeah, that's right. I was reminiscing about the good old days, back when I was first summoned to another world and wasn't even given a single potion." As he spoke, Sung-woo gave Gael an affectionate look, in quotes, which only made her more embarrassed and flustered. But Sung-woo wasn't really planning on settling the score with her yet. Finally, he stated his wish, to return to his homeland and open a restaurant. As soon as he said it, both the goddess Gael and his 3 teammates turned to stone. "A restaurant?" Gael couldn't believe her ears and asked again, I'm thinking about letting this people back home know the taste of the food from this world. Seung-woo nodded in response. You want to sell food from this world? Am I mishearing things? The red elf scratched her ear, asking if Earth food wasn't already common enough. I have to bring the food from here over there for it to actually mean anything. Seung-woo replied, preempting their thoughts. His three teammates all felt he was beyond saving. Even Gaia turned pale hearing that. Because out of all the dimensions, the food in this one tastes the absolute worst. She even wanted to talk him out of his insane plan. Before she could, he rudely slammed his sword into the ground just an inch from Gaia, making her jump and leaving her speechless. That's exactly why. Seung-woo said this with a terrifying, twisted smile. If I'm the only one who has to suffer through that garbage food, it just wouldn't be fair, would it? Seriously, all four people present were speechless. It turned out what Seung-woo really wanted was to make others suffer the same agony he did. Back to Seoul. A wealthy, peaceful city where the lights stayed on even through the night. But that was only the way it used to be. Ever since the gates and the monsters appeared, that wealth and peace had been shattered. The name Seoul had vanished without a trace. Right then, monsters were swaggering through the city, while on the roof of a high-rise in Disaster Zone A, a tall figure was watching them intently. Damn it! He cursed under his breath. Then, another person appeared behind him. One of the top 100 high-ranking hunters. Please try to maintain the dignity of a frontline member. Sir, Baek Kang-hyuk. This man, the superstar known as Baek, was casually lighting a cigarette to blow off some steam. He didn't bother apologizing for the curse word. Just the thought of having to work overtime to close that gate made Kang-hyuk feel incredibly annoyed. No, sir, you don't need to close that low-level gate. It'll close on its own soon enough, the girl replied. But it didn't seem to make Kang-hyuk any happier. He muttered that he was sick and tired of working overtime. Then he asked her if she had any clue what was actually going on here. This was supposed to be an S-rank danger zone, nothing special. But according to the girl, things had suddenly gotten weird. 4 days ago, when way too many monsters started appearing, Kang-hyuk had noticed it himself. It wasn't just the sheer number. The monsters were acting pretty strange too. For example, look at that three-headed beast down there. It's moving like something else is hunting it, something completely insane. Min replied, I think the same as you, sir. It looks like the boss will appear soon. And please, stop smoking. As the girl said this, she reached out to grab the cigarette from Kang-hyuk's hand, but he was faster. Hai held the cigarette up high to keep it out of reach. Just then, it went out from the sudden downpour. Within seconds, he was soaked. Kang-hyuk couldn't help but curse again. Then he flicked his sleeve and turned away. Damn, this is so annoying. If Min says so, then the boss raid should be starting soon. Tell them I'm taking 2 days off. Why am I even thinking about this? And it's so late, where do you think you're going? I'm not in the mood today, so I'm going to fill my stomach to save myself from the fatigue of working overtime. As he replied, a truly inhumane smile appeared on Kang-hyuk's face. After walking through the rain, Kang-hyuk made his decision. He chose a small, unremarkable eatery. The fatigue from overtime, the pressure of battle, and an empty stomach had pushed Kang-hyuk's stress to the limit. He planned to have a decent meal. If the food at this place was trash, he'd make them take their sign down and close the shop for good. And if the food was good, Kang-hyuk would yell at them for making him eat late. In short, whether the food was good or bad, he just wanted to pick a fight to vent his frustration. Harboring that heartless thought, Kang-hyuk headed toward the shop, but as he got to the door, he realized they had already hung up the closed sign. Kang-hyuk let out a heavy sigh. Closed already? What terrible luck. The more he thought about it, the angrier he got. He couldn't believe this sign was blocking his visit. Thinking that, Kang-hyuk reached out and crushed the sign. Then, he kicked the door open and stormed into the restaurant. Everything seemed unfinished. The owner, of course, was CEO Woo, who was currently busy calculating his tasks. He hadn't signed the contract with the supplier yet, and he still needed to buy more cooking tools. It had already been 4 days since he returned to Earth. The CEO wasn't in a hurry, so he decided to take his time and set things up bit by bit. Like right now, for instance. I was sipping a cup of coffee and picking out a movie from a stack of CDs. Now, this is what you call living. Seung-woo sighed in satisfaction, but that moment of bliss didn't last long, as his peace was shattered by Kang-hyuk rudely slamming the door open. After busting into someone else's place, the kid had the nerve to arrogantly remark, "Man, it's so empty in here. Guess you don't have any customers today, huh?" The CEO stayed silent for 1, 2, 3 seconds. Trying to keep his cool, the CEO turned his head and spoke to the brat in a cold, deadpan tone. That's because we haven't officially opened yet. Little did he know he was dealing with someone totally clueless. Kang Hyuk made himself at home, sat down, and flashed a mischievous grin, saying he didn't care one bit whether the place was open or not. Then he ordered the CEO to hurry up and serve him something tasty. Sung-woo was a huge movie buff, and his precious movie-watching plans had just been ruined by Kang Hyuk. Not to mention, the kid had the audacity to talk back to him on their very first meeting. Sung-woo was fighting the urge to snap this brat's neck, but when he took a closer look at Kang Hyuk's face, his anger seemed to fade just a little. Huh? What are you staring at? Kang Hyuk, who had been absent-mindedly tapping his fingers on the table, flared up when he caught the CEO's gaze. Nothing, he replied, though his eyes were still intently observing the other person. In the CEO's eyes, Kang Hyuk had thin, frail arms and legs. They looked like they'd snap with the slightest kick. It seemed like his eyes and brain had issues too, since he hadn't even noticed the giant closed sign hanging right out there. Since Sung-woo had just returned to Earth, he naturally wasn't caught up on the intel regarding the celebrity status, or the code name of Kang Hyuk. In his eyes, the kid was just a poor, starving boy who hadn't had a proper meal in ages, which is why he was so thin. Maybe his brain had shriveled up from hunger too, which would explain why he had no manners or sense of decency. The more he thought about it, the more pity the CEO felt. He even secretly wiped away a tear. All of this was caught by Kang Hyuk, which only made him even angrier. Hey! Why are you looking at me with that pathetic look in your eyes, huh? Can't you see my cloak? I'm on the front lines, you know. Ignoring Kang Hyuk, who was roaring like a tiger, Sung-woo had already started digging through the fridge to figure out what to cook. Kang Hyuk was furious, but he wanted something to eat, so he swallowed his pride and sat down. Fine, whatever. Just bring me something edible, he grumbled. Sung-woo didn't answer, as he was busy checking his ingredients. The stuff in the fridge was a bit on the heavy side. In the end, Sung-woo picked out a slab of fresh meat. He thought to himself, "You cheeky little brat, I'll lower myself to help you out. I'll feed you something worthy." The meat, which looked like beef, was actually shoulder meat, found between the long neck and the wings of a red dragon. Compared to pork, it was like the ribs. Sung-woo pulled out his knife and skillfully prepped the meat. Red dragon meat contains fire soul energy, so it has quite a strong, spicy kick, which is why you have to drizzle it with fruit juice. To give it a fancy, zesty aroma, the juice Sung-woo chose today was grape juice. As he seared the meat, he drizzled it over, even though the meat's original flavor wasn't bad at all. But he figured it would have a wonderful effect on his very first customer. Sung-woo poured his heart and soul into the cooking, and just as expected, the act of cooking made him feel quite happy. Screech! The meat being seared suddenly let out a shrill cry, making Kang Hyuk jump in his seat. "I definitely heard that wrong, right?" he asked, his face going pale. "I thought I just heard the meat scream." Facing Kang Hyuk's bewildered look, Sung-woo just smiled and calmly replied, "Scream? I doubt that." "Really?" He was still skeptical, but at that moment, the dish was finished. After a dash of ground pepper, Sung-woo plated it and set it in front of Kang Hyuk. The steak looked fancy, like something straight out of a 5-star restaurant. Kang Hyuk inspected it with the look of a picky mother-in-law checking out her daughter-in-law, but he had to admit, the chef in front of him was truly amazing. "Not bad. Your knife skills aren't half bad either," Kang Hyuk finally said. Sung-woo was a bit surprised that this rude little brat was actually complimenting him. Kang Hyuk picked up his knife and fork, and carefully touched the meat. In Kang Hyuk's eyes, the steak had a light fruity aroma, and the sear was perfect. It had to be delicious. "Wait, what's the name of this dish?" he asked out of the blue. "Roy steak," he replied. "I've never heard of that, so I've got to try it to find out." Kang Hyuk muttered, then started focusing on cutting the meat. But he quickly realized something was very wrong, because Kang Hyuk used all his strength, but couldn't get the meat to budge even a little. Finally, he gave up and had to ask the CEO for help. "Hey, why is this so hard to cut?" Let me cut it for you." He pulled the plate toward himself and thought to himself, "These two are so weak. They can't even cut a piece of meat." Kang Hyuk obviously had never heard the name Roy, because K. Roy had once been a formidable enemy of Sung-woo. Back when he was fighting in the other dimension, I was a great red dragon, an elder of the Red Dragon clan, and a powerful assistant to the Demon King for 1800 years. While cutting the meat, Sung-woo unconsciously remembered the time he fought him. That old dragon was incredibly ferocious, and it had been a real struggle to defeat him. Now, as the victor, Sung-woo was leisurely cutting up Roy, which had turned into a steak on his plate. "That dull knife probably can't cut that meat, huh?" Kang Hyuk said lazily. But the moment he finished speaking, he looked back to see the meat had already been sliced in two by Sung-woo. He forced an awkward smile to save face and replied, "Guess you must be tired, making your hands shake, huh?" Kang Hyuk was incredibly embarrassed because he was, after all, a front-line soldier. "Can't even cut a steak properly," he muttered dismissively, then picked up a piece of the steak to taste it. From the very first bite, his entire palate exploded. Kang Hyuk's body trembled, and he nearly collapsed onto the table, his mouth letting out continuous broken sounds that left CEO Woo incredibly curious. Finally, Kang Hyuk couldn't take it anymore and let out a loud roar. But then, he quickly clamped his hand over his mouth when he saw fire spraying out of it. "Oh my God, am I breathing fire? Sob, this tastes terrible." Kang Hyuk was on the verge of tears. "Well, I made it taste bad on purpose," the person opposite him replied calmly. "What?" Kang Hyuk asked, still clutching his mouth, seemingly unable to believe what he had just heard. But Seung-woo spoke with great enthusiasm, even slamming the table. "A truly excellent dish should be eaten to survive and gain strength." Kang Hyuk didn't understand what kind of crazy talk this guy was spewing. He only knew that even though he felt miserable, he just couldn't spit the piece of meat out of his mouth. Keeping it in wasn't an option because it was way too spicy, so Kang Hyuk had no choice but to swallow it. But as soon as it hit his stomach, Kang Hyuk's body began to show more strange symptoms. He couldn't even describe what that strangeness felt like, because immediately after, he passed out. "Tastes awful," was the only thought the superstar had about this dish. As for CEO Woo, even seeing a customer pass out from food poisoning right in his shop didn't faze him at all. In fact, he watched the other man with great interest. A full hour later, Kang Hyuk suddenly clutched his throat and woke up with a look of pure shock on his face, only to find Seung-woo sitting on the sofa, yawning lazily. This indifferent attitude made Kang Hyuk's blood boil. He questioned, "You almost killed me, and now you're just yawning?" Driven by that rage, Kang Hyuk lunged forward, wanting to kick Seung-woo, but that powerful kick was blocked by the man with just one hand. When his foot was caught, Kang Hyuk was stunned. The opponent didn't even seem to be using any effort at all. He started criticizing him. "Finished eating and this is all the strength you've got? Truly pathetic. And this is supposed to be 3-star meat?" Kang Hyuk heard Seung-woo call him weak with his own ears, but until now the word weak had never had anything to do with him. "You say I'm weak?" he asked back. "Yeah, that's right." Seung-woo replied with a laugh and let go. Kang Hyuk's pride instantly shattered. Weak? He didn't care how the guy blocked his kick. But being called weak triggered Kang Hyuk's combat mode. He stepped back and then, using all his might, threw a powerful punch toward the other man. While throwing the punch, Kang Hyuk yelled, emphasizing, "I am a first-order hunter, Kang Hyuk." But this time it was even more miserable than the last. Kang Hyuk's punch couldn't even get close to CEO Woo. Instead, he got a flick to the forehead. That flick, which looked so casual, had enough power to send Kang Hyuk flying backward and knocked him unconscious instantly. "Can't you control your temper even a little?" Seung-woo said in an impatient tone. "I'm going back to sleep." Not understanding what the hell First Order meant to make him act so cocky, he looked it up online and was immediately enlightened about the concept of the world's 100 strongest hunters. But this information was a huge blow to CEO Woo because that weak kid who couldn't even take a flick to the forehead was one of the 100 strongest hunters in the world. If that were true, the Earth was doomed. Even though he didn't want that to happen, Seung-woo didn't want to get involved either. So he started thinking. After a while, a bizarre idea popped into Seung-woo's head, and he flashed a dangerous smile while looking at Kang Hyuk, who was sprawled out on the floor. Because of the sudden appearance of spatial gates, a new profession had emerged to fight against the monsters that were appearing in increasing numbers. Those are the hunters, and the top 100 hunters in the world have gathered under the name First Order. Kang Hyuk was one of them, but now he was having to kneel and apologize to CEO Woo for his arrogant attitude since he walked in. "Kneeling to apologize just because I'm stronger than you?" holding a coffee cup in one hand. His tone wasn't heavy or light, but it scared Kang Hyuk so much he didn't dare lift his head. "Hey, do you pull this stuff at other restaurants?" Only then did the other man dare to look up, but Kang Hyuk didn't answer, just smiled blankly. Though, that attitude was an answer in itself. Seeing this, Sung-woo let out a long sigh. "It's fine. I knew it, I can read you like a book. Oh, but do people wear shoes more often these days?" Sung-woo muttered some lame joke while Kang Hyuk didn't even dare to breathe loudly. Listening to the way he talked, he assumed he was a foreigner and that he was so strong that if he made any mistakes, Sung-woo could completely wipe him out right then and there. The more he thought, the more nervous he got. I didn't know what CEO Woo might do to him next, but after finishing his coffee, he calmly said, "All right, I'll turn you into someone completely different from who you are now." "Yes," Kang Hyuk replied obediently. But not knowing what he meant, Sung-woo continued, "You're in the First Order. You need to be much stronger to protect this planet." "Right." Then, an impromptu civics lesson began. Sung-woo started spouting all sorts of morals about how to guide someone back onto the right path, both in terms of skill and knowledge. In order to mold a person into someone with real promise, he decided he would take it upon himself to train Kang Hyuk without ever asking if the kid even wanted it. "What if I refuse?" Kang Hyuk asked timidly. Sung-woo's expression changed in a split second, and the look in his eyes was answer enough to make the kid fall right into line. Kang Hyuk shouted, loud and clear, "From now on, I look forward to your guidance, teacher." His compliant attitude made Sung-woo extremely satisfied, and he immediately began imparting some information. The basics about humanity that he deemed necessary. Sung-woo's relentless energy was enough to make Kang Hyuk's ears bleed. Naturally, he didn't want to absorb any of this knowledge. But because he wanted to keep his skin in one piece, he could only listen in silence. This insufferable old geezer. This game really has no end to it, he grumbled internally. By the time the guy was done, he probably could have built a 14-story building with all those words he'd spewed out. After enduring for a while, Kang Hyuk couldn't hold back and had to interrupt Sung-woo. "Hold on, teacher. May I ask what your previous job was?" "Ah, I was a teacher. A philosophy teacher." "Oh, you're sharp. Your intuition isn't bad at all." Sung-woo clapped his hands to praise the guy in front of him, then said with a beaming smile, "Now, you have to learn about the values and importance of food." This time, Kang Hyuk's anger exploded. He pointed at the steak he had only managed to take one bite of. He raised his voice and said, "You call that food? Anyone with eyes can see it. That's some kind of chemical weapon. Do you think you should say something like that to someone who spent so much time cooking it? You're acting like a complete jerk." Sung-woo's face darkened, and he started attacking Kang Hyuk with a lecture so long that it made the kid scream for mercy. Finally, Sung-woo concluded that one should never waste food, and he forced Kang Hyuk to put that philosophy into practice immediately. So, this is where we find ourselves. Kang Hyuk is carrying the half-eaten plate of steak with both hands, obviously without a shred of willingness. "Teacher, are you saying I have to finish all of this?" "That's right." The two words, "that's right," hit like an arrow through Kang Hyuk's heart. He started crying, shaking his head violently, saying there was no way he could eat that unswallowable stuff. But Sung-woo didn't show the slightest bit of pity. He patted the kid's shoulder and encouraged him, saying, "Don't worry, you'll get used to it." "I said no, and I mean no. This isn't even food." If he could, Kang Hyuk would have really wanted to toss that plate in his hand as far as he could. But Sung-woo wouldn't let him do that at all. In the end, under the non-violent pressure of his master, Kang Hyuk had to swallow every last bit of that dragon meat steak and immediately collapsed to the floor, losing consciousness once again. Which, if this guy wakes up, he's definitely going to barf his guts out and make a huge mess, isn't he? Sung-woo clicked his tongue, then leaned down, grabbed the kid's feet and started dragging him away. "I can't let things go like this. I will make sure you digest all of that precious meat. I really don't want to see this planet destroyed. So all of you need to become much stronger." 2 days later, at the ISAC headquarters, Kang Hyuk's subordinates are extremely worried because they've lost contact with him for 2 whole days. That's why she had to call in Min, who was mentioned earlier, and is also the leader of the support team, to discuss this urgently. Because he is Big Kang Hyuk, he couldn't possibly have been kidnapped, held for interrogation, or kept as a prisoner. The girl was incredibly frustrated, of course. How could the head of the First Order be so weak that he'd get kidnapped or defeated? Maybe he's hiding somewhere after causing some trouble. Or maybe he's tangled up with some girl, Min thought. Even so, there was only one day left to prepare before their operation began. The timing was critical, which is why the girl was so anxious. Mine was so angry he ground his teeth for a long time. Then he said, "All right, fine. I'll go find this troublesome bastard. So just get everything ready." After that, he quickly left the headquarters. As far as Min was concerned, he really didn't want to use his skills to track down a nuisance like Kang Hyuk, but he was out of options now. So Min knelt down and activated his skill, and it really didn't take long to find Kang Hyuk's whereabouts. Upon reaching the door of Seung-woo's restaurant, Min was still completely baffled. He wondered what the hell Kang Hyuk was doing here. The front door was locked, but Min easily opened it with the lockpick he carried with him. Since Kang Hyuk lost contact while he was here, even though he didn't really buy the kidnapping story, Min still treaded carefully. He started scanning his surroundings the moment he stepped through the front door. He couldn't help but wonder if Kang Hyuk was being held captive in the basement. Suddenly, Seung-woo appeared right behind him, his face looking anything but welcoming. Do you know what a trespasser is?" he asked, and Min's expression shifted instantly. To be able to show up out of nowhere without him noticing, this guy had to be a master. No offense, just self-defense," he added, Seung-woo said, flashing a smile that made his skin crawl. Meanwhile, down in the basement, Kang Hyuk was indeed trapped, forced by Seung-woo to dig the dirt endlessly with a pickaxe. Kang Hyuk had been stuck doing this for 2 days straight. He felt like he was going to kick the bucket right there. Suddenly, he heard familiar footsteps approaching. Kang Hyuk realized it was his teammate, and his eyes lit up. "Just as I expected from you, Min." "I knew you'd come! I trusted you to save me! So where's the exit?" Min's eyes were bloodshot. Ignoring Kang Hyuk's excitement, he reached out. He grabbed another pickaxe and declared, "I've been captured too." The situation only changed in that Kang Hyuk now had a partner to dig with. The two worked until their limbs were trembling, and soon enough, Min couldn't take it anymore and collapsed onto the ground. "What on earth am I even doing?" he muttered, "as if you don't know." "Obviously, we're digging a tunnel," Kang Hyuk replied, his arms still swinging the pickaxe up and down. "You think I don't know that?" "I was asking why," Min roared. "Why did you have to go and provoke that monster in the first place?" Because he had pushed himself too hard, a sharp pain in his lower back caused him to collapse again. Kang Hyuk felt bad for Min's old age, yet he also pitied his own fate. But truthfully, he hadn't known Seung-woo was such a monster. If he had, he would have been smart enough to stay away. Digging the tunnel again, the two sat down and started grumbling. Kang Hyuk wondered just how strong Seung-woo could actually be. "You've met Hakan before, haven't you?" he asked Min. The Hakan Kang Hyuk mentioned was a top-tier hunter, rank 85, nicknamed the Returning Hero, someone already considered incredibly fearsome. Yet, both Min and Kang Hyuk had to admit that Seung-woo was on an entirely different level, so strong they couldn't even fathom it. At this, Min painfully crawled up. "Are we going again? Can't we take a break?" Kang Hyuk asked. "Break my foot! I need to tear that guy who provoked the monster into 2 pieces first." Min genuinely wanted to lash out at Kang Hyuk, but unfortunately, he didn't even have the strength to lift the pickaxe. Kang Hyuk took the pickaxe from him and said, "I know it's my fault. That's why I'm doing your share too." "That's not all. Something even bigger is about to happen. Monster bugs are going to appear soon. If we stay trapped here, we're done for." "Of course it's a big deal," Mine nodded, "because we two are the highest-ranked hunters in Area A. What else is there?" Saying that, he turned and shot Kang Hyuk a look full of affection. But no matter how hard he glared, it wouldn't change anything. How could Kang Hyuk have foreseen that? He'd be unlucky enough to run into a menace like Seung-woo? After all, he was just an overtime worker who got hungry and accidentally picked up a secret item. And Min couldn't really blame him. He could only sigh again and again. "Lucky you. Regardless, let's go apologize and hope he lets us out." With that, Min straightened his clothes, preparing to climb up. "Wait. You think he'll just gently let us go like that?" Kang Hyuk wanted to stop him. "If we explain the situation, he might sympathize. Besides, his mana is strangely pure." So the two gathered their courage and climbed to the first floor to present their request to Seung-woo. Kang Hyuk thought he would spit fire and toss them back into the basement. To their surprise, he agreed easily. "Letting you out? Sure, whatever." Seung-woo's casual response left Kang Hyuk's jaw on the floor, while Min bowed deeply, expressing his gratitude from the bottom of his heart. Then, Seung-woo continued, "You're Min Okafor, right? This is annoying, so I'm going to drop the honorifics, okay? Mine was a bit tense after being called by his full name, but he replied, "That's fine. But how did you know my name?" "Oh, I just looked it up online." Seung-woo waved the phone in his hand, then started putting on an apron. "You two, wait a moment. Even though it's before the restaurant opens, it's not very polite to let guests leave on an empty stomach, so I'll treat you to a meal." "I don't want it! It won't taste good!" Kang Hyuk immediately opposed it with his life. "I knew you'd react like that. So, between something delicious and something terrible, which one do you choose?" Seung-woo asked Kang Hyuk, who looked a bit dazed by the question. "I mean, what kind of fool would choose a bad meal over a delicious one?" After he spoke, Seung-woo replied that he would make foil-baked salmon. Contrary to Kang Hyuk's clueless expression, Min seemed more anxious and cautious, thinking to himself, "Wait a second, why would he make us choose a dish? There has to be a reason for this. This is weird. I need to think this through." Sensing a trap in CEO Seung-woo's question, Min ultimately decided to choose the bad dish. Kang Hyuk looked at him like he was a total lunatic. Meanwhile, CEO Seung-woo looked genuinely thrilled. "Oh, you've got quite the adventurous spirit." With that, he happily went into the kitchen, pulled out a piece of salmon, and started prepping. Just like before, the CEO's movements were incredibly skilled. Since it was an open kitchen, the two of them sitting outside could see every move he made. Min was amazed. "That's impressive. But are you an idiot?" Kang Hyuk asked. "Why on earth did you pick the bad dish? I'm already starting to regret it a little. Your dish looks so good." The two kept their eyes glued to CEO Seung-woo, not wanting to miss a single thing. They felt the way he was cooking was a bit strange. Usually, you'd let salmon sit for 5 to 10 minutes to get rid of the fishy smell, but CEO Seung-woo started cooking it immediately, then adjusted the seasoning while massaging the outside with wine and salt, leaving the fish for longer than usual to get rid of the smell. That's definitely a new technique. By now, Kang Hyuk had finished seasoning his and put the fish in the pan. "Add this and we're done. Now I just wait for it to finish cooking." He said that, then turned to Min and asked, "For the next dish, do you like kidneys or liver?" "Yes, a little bit," Min replied, "but I have a bit of gastritis." He really did look physically weaker and more sickly than Kang Hyuk. Upon hearing that, Seung-woo clicked his tongue and commented on his physical condition. "Min, you can't maintain the energy needed for sustained combat." Hearing this, Kang Hyuk nodded vigorously and started chiming in, "Exactly. This guy can only fight for 5 minutes, and he's already panting and lagging behind." Called out like that, Min was so angry he could only grit his teeth, unable to do a thing. Meanwhile, Seung-woo was meticulously calculating portions for a patient. Finally, he took down a tall pot and placed it on the stove. Seeing that, Kang Hyuk felt a bit of contempt. I thought he was going to make something insane, but it turns out it's just porridge? Thank goodness, Min. It's hard to screw up porridge." The two breathed a sigh of relief. Before long, both dishes were done. When the plate of salmon was set down in front of Kang Hyuk, his eyes sparkled. He kept muttering, "This is what you call a meal." At least this time the meat is soft, unlike that terrifying steak. Kang Hyuk used his chopsticks to pick up a piece and put it in his mouth. This time, all of his senses exploded, but in a totally different way. "Damn, this is so good. How can someone who cooks this well possibly do evil things?" Kang Hyuk was so excited he was slamming the table while eating. "Well then, make sure you finish it all. Here is the dipping sauce." CEO Seung-woo pushed the sauce over, and after Kang Hyuk tried it, he was even more hyped. "Oh my god, with the sauce, it's even better." His behavior was so exaggerated that it made Min glance at him with disdain. Now it was time for his dish to take the stage. Seung-woo took a large bowl and poured out the porridge. Min watched every one of his movements, wondering why on earth he had chosen the bad dish. "Calm down. In baseball, they call this a sacrifice play." I was determined to eat the bad dish to see if I could find the meaning behind his question, he reassured himself. Just then, Seung-woo pushed the bowl of porridge in front of Min and said with a very sincere tone, "It might not look that appetizing, but I hope you enjoy it." However, looking at the bowl of porridge emitting a green color, not unlike a chemical weapon, mine felt like he was in for a rough time. Kang Hyuk poked his head in to look at Min's bowl. "Is this porridge?" Inside was a strange, mushy green liquid. Curious, he asked, "Did you put uranium in there or something?" Seung-woo crossed his arms and gave a cold glance. "Sorry about that. I didn't put that in there." Kang Hyuk keeps pestering him, asking if he's skipping the energy drink and why the color looks so weird. He finally drops a comment about how anyone could possibly eat this stuff, but Min stays silent from start to finish, staring straight ahead with a strange look that leaves Hang Hyuk puzzled. "Hey, what's up?" he asks, gently stirring the dish, eyeing the color and the way the magical energy ripples within it. This is definitely it. An intense urge hits Min, making him trust that this dish acts like a miraculous healing elixir. His eyes look up at Seung-gu in pure amazement. "You can make this right here on the spot? Even the top experts couldn't preserve pure magic like this, could they?" Seung-gu just keeps that calm, harmless smile on his face, and Min starts to probe. "Hey, this... could it be?" Suddenly, Seung-gu raises a finger to his lips, signaling him to be quiet. Min gets the message immediately. "I shouldn't talk about it, right? Anyway, if you eat this, your stamina will recover." Not hesitating anymore, Mine takes a full spoonful. The moment it hits his tongue, a rush of vibrant energy surges through his entire body. His strength is back. But honestly, it doesn't taste great. Why does it smell like iron and lead? Min scowls at the bowl, telling himself if he wants to heal, he has to finish it. So, he force-feeds himself spoonful after spoonful, leaving it to fate, while Hang Hyuk next to him is actually enjoying it. 30 minutes later, Min's pain just fades away. Hang Hyuk, clueless as ever, just says, "Whoa, that's amazing, what happened?" He turns to look at Min, who is frozen in place. "You okay?" Mine touches his stomach. His wounded stomach lining has been regenerated, and his strength is fully restored. He feels so at ease. A look of pure relief spreads across his face for the first time in ages. Hang Hyuk keeps pestering him, demanding to know what just happened. But Min bows deeply and says, sincerely, "I will never forget this kindness." Seung-gu just smiles slightly and replies, "It's nothing." Hang Hyuk watches the harmony between the two, completely bewildered. What the hell is going on? What's with this atmosphere? Then, he grinds his teeth and demands another serving. Soon, a pile of empty plates is stacked high, and Hang Hyuk is lounging back with a round, full belly. "I'm alive," he says, and Min takes the initiative. He looks at Seung-gu and asks, "If the monsters appear at the gate tomorrow, will you help us?" Seung-gu turns away, looking hesitant. "About that." But Hang Hyuk lunges over, putting an arm around his shoulder, insisting, "There's no way," which confuses Min. "What do you mean?" Hang Hyuk points toward the owner and emphasizes that the shopkeeper is an incredibly powerful regressor. Someone that strong wouldn't help us, Min thinks to himself. The shopkeeper has his own reasons. If he wanted to help, he would have said so. He probably won't get involved in our business, and Seung-gu is actually quite surprised to hear that. Hang Hyuk continues, "If the shopkeeper got involved, it'd be too easy. But then what happens later? We'd lose the chance to train and become stronger ourselves." Suddenly, he gets all excited. "That's why I want to say this. We have to overcome these hardships to get stronger. That's the only way it's meaningful." Min just frowns, unimpressed. "You've got to be kidding me." Hang Hyuk is stunned into silence. "What?" Mine stands up and gets right in Hang Hyuk's face. "Stop playing around, Beck Hang Hyuk." He looks like he's trying to dodge the question. "What's wrong?" Min points at Hang Hyuk's forehead, explaining, "If he starts being active on the battlefield, the Hunter Association will find out, and he'll get ranked in the first order. The more he talks, the higher his risk. He'd get pushed down from 100 to 101 and lose his standing. Aren't you worried about that?" Seung-gu chimes in, "Is that so?" Hang Hyuk just sticks his tongue out and scratches his head with a goofy laugh. "You caught me." Mine doesn't even bother talking anymore. That's just how he is. Seung-gu sighs. "I won't turn you into a reality." He rests his chin on his hand, thinking something over. "That's true, too." His tone remains gentle. "I've seen so many kingdoms that only relied on a single hero. When that person died, everything would just..." The next words he speaks are heavy. "Perish." As soon as he finishes, Min stands up. "If that's the case, we won't bother you anymore. Let's go, Beck Hang Hyuk." Seung-gu leans against the counter, asking politely, "Do you want to stop by here often? I won't charge you." He even points intentionally at Hang Hyuk. "You, Beck, come see me often." But he immediately refuses. "No thanks." The door closes quickly. On the way back, Hang Hyuk holds his stomach. 10 servings is way too much for me." Mine criticizes him. "You ate 10 servings for free? Are you a pig?" Hang Hyuk snaps back, annoyed. "It's too loud! You mean that porridge with the smell? It tasted like death." Hearing that, Min just smiles slightly and sighs. "Porridge with a smell. Even though he knows the truth, he keeps it to himself. One day you'll understand. They were lucky to have this opportunity today. The next day, on the battlefield, Min and Hang Hyuk stand on a high-rise building, looking down until a helicopter suddenly appears. Min announces, "It's here." Hang Hyuk gets ready. "You're in good shape, right?" The two prepare their basic weapons. Hang Hyuk slams his hands together, and with a burst of energy, they both charge forward. "Let's fight together." The scene cuts to the TV broadcasting the news. This morning, a dangerous species of monster has... The monsters in Sector A were wiped out by the superstar team of Baek Hang-hyo and the number 2 ranked Min Uk. The South Korean government awarded the entire team with medals for their service. After the job was done, Hunter Baek Hang-hyo refused all interviews, claiming he had an upset stomach from overeating. Meanwhile, Seo Eun-gu kept following the news. Good for them, he thought to himself. Truth be told, if he had gone to the portal when the dimensional rift was unstable, the monsters would have sensed his aura. They would have moved to areas that hadn't been cordoned off yet, putting civilians in danger. Seo Eun-gu stretched, picked up his cup and muttered, "I'll leave it to you hunters to protect this world." He stood up and stretched his back. One more week until the grand opening. Seo Eun-gu put his hands on his hips and looked out the window. Time to get ready for the day. Suddenly he noticed something. A furry figure appeared outside. It was Nabi, who called out, "Hello!" Seo Eun-gu opened the door to greet it. Nabi raised its paws high, holding a package. "Your delivery has arrived!" Back to the present, the sky was clear. Nabi raised its chubby little paw and politely asked, "May I come in now?" Seo Eun-gu smiled. "Come on in." Aelpords look and act like cats, but they are incredibly intelligent and have more taste buds than humans, making them excellent cooks. Their other senses, like smell and hearing, are also far superior to humans. He rested his chin on his hands, watching it, and sighed. They just love taking care of people, don't they? They can work as assistants, sometimes even as medics, and take on all sorts of other roles. They are the greatest support a hero could ask for, but there was one thing Seo Eun-gu was wary of. Because they are so attentive, they tend to turn heroes into literal pigs. Well, it's fine, he thought. I'm not a hero anymore. That's why they have the nickname, the hero-killing kitties. People often argue, our Aelport is cuter, right? Nonsense, ours is cuter. Because of that, back when he was in the military, Seo Eun-gu really wanted an Aelport, but back then he had knelt on the ground begging, "Oh heavens, oh goddess, please, I beg you, send an Aelport to me." I'm the only one here who doesn't have a cat. Gaio didn't even listen. "I'm busy as hell. If you want one, go find one yourself." Remembering that still left a bitter taste in his mouth. He shook off the thought. He started the conversation again. "Anyway, since Renato requested the pudding slime and sent an Aelport along with it." Seo Eun-gu pointed at himself. "I'm not a hero anymore, I'm a restaurant owner. If cat hair gets everywhere, I won't be able to run this business." Nabi stood up on its hind legs. "My fur doesn't shed. Try pulling it." Seo Eun-gu was surprised and reached out to pinch a tuft of fur. It really didn't shed a single strand. I exclaimed, "That's incredible!" Nabi flopped down, letting Seo Eun-gu pet it. He asked, "So how did you even make it all the way out here?" It immediately stood up, crossed its arms, and boldly declared, "I defeated the cat god to get here." Seo Eun-gu froze, stunned. "What?" But Nabi just brushed it off. "Nothing, just kidding." Looking back, when it first met the cat god, Nabi looked pretty pathetic. The cat god gave a curt refusal. No. But it used its big, sparkling eyes to beg. However, all it got in response was a shake of the head. "Stop making that cute face. You're a dangerous character." Nabi drooped and started throwing a tantrum. The cat god sighed helplessly. "I only said that because I didn't realize how dangerous you really were. That's why I said it." Nabi immediately cheered up. "It's because I'm very cool, way cooler than any other species." The cat god was completely speechless, thinking to itself, I have to let it go. I can't let it keep acting like a goofball like this. Besides, it's just going to run away and find another hero if I don't let it go. Scene changed to the forest. After a long time, Nabi sat sadly by a tree trunk. Why can't I find a hero? Suddenly, it saw a blue butterfly fly by. The blue butterfly told me. It whispered something. Then it turned around and flapped its wings, flying away. Nabi stared blankly at the tiny figure. Right then, it realized something important. So that's how it is. I'm just not meant for heroes. Nabi concluded that it wasn't strong enough, so from that day on, it began to train itself. While training, Nabi shouted, "Cat punch! Meow!" It told itself it had to be a master of all trades to become stronger and smarter. It wanted to become a super cat. Listening to the story, Seo Ungu finally understood why it trained so hard. He guessed the gist of the story. "So you mean you actually defeated the cat god, is that it?" Nabi proudly admitted, "That's exactly it." This energetic demeanor left Seo Ungu momentarily stunned. He wondered why Renato had sent it here. He frowned, thinking, only Grai and Theo could understand the level of pain I'm in right now. Seo Ungu looked at Nabi. "Look," he said, "I'm retired." Immediately, that sycophantic look appeared again. This caught Seo Ungu off guard. If you want to work here, I'll hire you." Target achieved. Overjoyed, it hopped around excitedly to thank Nabi, then jumped down from the chair and bowed sincerely, saying, "I'll be counting on your help from now on, Sungu. Please head over there." He stroked his chin, thinking for a moment. "Since your name is Nabi, your nickname will be... How about that?" Sungu gently patted its head. "Let's go with Nabi, okay? Do your best from now on, Nabi." Just like that, the Warriors restaurant had a new employee. In the distance, two figures stood watching them through binoculars. The target is Sungu's restaurant, a shop that just appeared out of nowhere. The person accompanying him added, "Business is like war, just like a game of capture the flag. Which means this new shop is our final enemy." Both decided to make their move. "If that's the case, let's go crush our enemy." The restaurant owner, Lee Dongpark Dansu, furrowed his brows and asked indignantly, "Do you see that?" That coffee machine placed by the window. The crafty cafe owner, T-Sick, sneered as he assessed it. "Looks like a very expensive coffee machine." He darkened his expression and mocked, "A diner, and they're planning to sell coffee too?" Beside him, Dansu put his hands on his hips, pouting as he criticized, "How arrogant! Isn't he trying to show up a cafe owner like me?" Then, he clenched his fists, gloomily plotting, "Should we use our connections to shut them down like we did to that last cafe?" Hearing that, T-Sick immediately put his hands on his hips and agreed, "That's a brilliant idea." Suddenly, he looked flustered. "Huh?" They stared intently at the two flower wreaths placed out front, stunned. "Please, just make good food, Beckhang," he hoped. "Congratulations on the opening, Minokif." Their eyes went wide with shock, speechless. T-Sick stroked his beard, trembling as he read, "Order number 1, Bek Hanghyuk, and order number 2, Min Okif, right next to it." Dansu grabbed a towel to wipe his sweat, terrified. They've already built connections with such important people before even opening? Why are they at this level? His blood boiled. He pulled the towel tight in his hands, resentful. Looks like someone took the back door and used money to get VIPs to their doorstep. Then, the two turned to each other with devious looks, understanding one another. Dansu stretched his neck, hands on his hips, and declared, "This won't do. That shop is a real eyesore." T-Sick adjusted his glasses, stretched his body, and groaned, "All right, let's prepare thoroughly and come back later." With that, the two quickly scurried away. Suddenly, Nabi's small hand poked them in the back, making them freeze. Dansu and T-Sick immediately turned around, confused. It smiled brightly and chirped, "Are you two customers?" T-Sick's eyes popped out in confusion. "A cat?" Dansu added, "A cat that can talk?" Even so, Nabi happily raised both little hands and said, "If you're customers, please come in." With that, it pulled the two of them into the shop, leaving them dazed. Dansu and T-Sick sat at the long table, helpless and speechless. But then, T-Sick leaned over to Dansu and whispered, "Boss Beck, that cat must be a monster, right?" Watching Nabi intently preparing drinks and carrying trays, he immediately dismissed it. "Not a monster. Looks like a trained beast man." Then, Dansu laughed heartily. "That's fine, too. I'll show it what class is." Suddenly, he rubbed his finger on the table. Dansu brought the finger up to examine it, then shook his head. "Impossible." T-Sick peered over, curious, then suspiciously asked, "It sheds more hair than you thought, right?" Looking at the spotlessly clean finger, they were both bewildered and said in unison, "There's not a single speck of dust." But then, they immediately turned away. Looking here and there, probing, but contrary to their expectations, they saw the clean, well-appointed room and gasped, "This place is just too clean." T-Sick clutched his head in fear, his voice trembling as he said to the man who had violated food safety regulations 3 times, "Even someone like me has nothing to criticize." Beside him, Dansu rested his chin on the table, worried. Why is there not a single strand of hair? Regardless, Nabi calmly placed a glass of water on the table. Once finished, it confidently held up its name tag and said, "I don't shed." Dansu stood up, looking at Nabi with suspicion. A breed that doesn't shed? Next to him, T-Sick was baffled. But it's so soft like this. He brought his hand to his chin, suspicious. Whatever the case, this place is too clean. Do they use a cleaning company? Hearing that, Nabi quickly and eagerly replied, "I do the cleaning." Saying that, it raised its hand. T-Sick turned back, speechless. Afterward, he covered his face, mourning and groaning, "I'm so jealous. I need a cat like this too." Even so, Nabi nonchalantly placed the menu on the table and started, "Please order, you two." Seeing this, Dansu furrowed his brows, reaching out to point and signal a fault. Attempt number 1, failed. Let's move on to the second one. He agreed, raising his hand to signal quickly. He pointed and demanded, "The daily special. Give us 2 plates of this, can you?" Nabi happily took the menu and left. "I have received your order." Sungu opened the door, looking fresh and upbeat. "You want the daily special?" "I understand." Seeing that, T-Sick froze, wondering, did the boss come from a line of hunt? Dansu's eyes rounded. "He's so handsome." Hearing that, he immediately turned to snap at him. "What did you just say?" Even so, he kept his hands on his hips, watching Sungu's back. Sungu comfortably rolled up his sleeves and flipped the pan skillfully. Dansu was captivated, eyes following every move Sungu made. Then he gasped, "Those arm muscles!" Dansu watched closely and assessed, "That Chinese frying pan is really heavy too." Dan Xu watched intently, assessing the situation. That Chinese-style wok was seriously heavy. How can he be as perfect as a painting? Hearing that, Tae-Sik immediately slammed his hand on the table and challenged him. "Mr. Park, I respect your taste, but have you forgotten why we're here?" Dansu was startled, awkwardly stammering, "What are you talking about?" "I'm just surprised by his capabilities, that's all." Then, he covered his mouth and coughed slightly. Dansu cast a side-eye toward Seonggu, thinking to himself that he really was eye-catching, and watched him diligently working in the kitchen with genuine interest. "It's the first time I've seen someone with such a range of expressions," Dansu thought, watching Seonggu work dreamily. The effort, the skill, the focus, and even that look of genuine enjoyment. Nabi quickly brought out 2 steaming plates of food. She confidently placed them on the table and introduced the special of the day, stir-fried squid with rice. As the 2 beautiful plates were set down, Dansu gazed at them thoughtfully. "I didn't expect it to be stir-fried squid with rice." Tae-Sik agreed, saying, "Exactly. The menu said it would be made with whatever ingredients were available that day." But then, he took a spoonful. With a reluctant and disgruntled expression, since the ingredients were so clearly visible, it would be hard to file a complaint about allergies. They both brought a spoonful to their mouths, sharing the same thought. It was the taste. Dansu sighed, took a bite, and savored it. Seeing that, Tae-Sik immediately turned and asked, "How is it?" He chewed and replied, "This is good." Hearing that verdict, Tae-Sik quickly shoveled it into his mouth. "So I'll have some too." Then the 2 of them dug in voraciously until the plates were empty. Tae-Sik happily patted his stomach. "It really is delicious." Dansu wiped his mouth with a napkin and said, "He's very loyal to the basics. If you're Korean, you can't deny this flavor." Tae-Sik laughed excitedly, comparing, "The way he runs a cafe and snacks like this is different from how we do business." He placed a hand on his friend's shoulder, and he nodded in agreement. "It's different from my business style, too. It's different from my Western-style restaurant." Then, Dansu stood up and asked, "This place isn't half bad, is it?" Tae-Sik looked at him and replied, "I think so, too." Then the 2 of them quickly fanned out their money. Seeing that satisfied look, Nabi excitedly raised both hands and waved, "Please come back again." They walked outside together, waving back in a friendly manner. As they turned to leave, they chatted excitedly. "Maybe we should come here more often. Shouldn't we give him something to get closer to him?" Inside the shop, Sungu picked up a piece of paper and read it carefully. Seeing that, Nabi walked over, puzzled. "What's that?" He held out the paper and explained, "It's the blacklist Hang Hyo X sent over. Their names are on it." Sungu put his hands on his hips and asked, I defeated them with just stir-fried squid. And rice? Do I have some special talent too? She raised her hands in agreement. As expected, the warrior is the best. After that, he calmly picked up his glass, reminding himself to treasure his neighbors. Sung-gu smiled, remembering, and muttered to himself. From the very beginning, I thought that my way of operating wouldn't interfere with any other shop. Then he reminded himself that symbiosis, living together, is very important. No matter what, he couldn't abandon the habits of a warrior. As he stepped outside, Sung-gu suddenly froze, bewildered. Since when was he in a massive arena? Sung-gu breathed heavily, looking at his opponent. He gripped his sword tightly, exclaiming, "So heavy!" Then, Sung-gu looked up at the fortress where the crowd was excitedly shouting, "Kill him!" They chanted in unison, "Kill him! Kill him!" Sung-gu just stood there, looking up. Then, he looked at his opponent, who lay collapsed in pain on the floor. He breathed heavily, teeth clenched, and yelled, "Do it!" Hearing that, Sung-gu gripped the hilt of his sword. He raised it with both hands, his face grim, intending to strike his opponent. He brought the blade down hard, but it didn't pierce the opponent in front of him. It landed just beside his hand. When he didn't feel any pain, the opponent opened his eyes in shock. Seeing that, Sung-gu immediately spoke up, explaining, "I'm not doing it. I'm tired of this. We are just slaves to war." That action drew the ire of the crowd. They threw paper down onto the floor in disgust. Sung-gu suddenly clutched his stomach and collapsed to his knees. Then, he looked up at the sky. Looking at the brilliant sky, he sighed, "I really want some kimchi stew." A large bowl was set out. Min wiped his mouth and praised, "It's wonderful today too, teacher." Even so, Sung-gu remained with his arms crossed, deep in thought, and didn't speak. Seeing this, he hurriedly waved his hands. "Oh, sorry, teacher." Sung-gu scratched his head, sharing awkwardly, "It's nothing. I was just remembering something from the old days." Min continued to praise, "The kimchi stew is delicious." At the same time, Nabi reached out to clear the bowl. She quickly took it inside while Sung-gu entertained the guest. "Is this your first time eating this dish?" Min looked at him and explained, "I'm originally from America, so I'm not quite used to kimchi yet." Under the drizzling rain, the restaurant felt strangely peaceful. Min held his warm glass of water, looking outside and sighed, "It's so peaceful and wonderful here." Then he set the cup down on the table, leaned on his arms, stood up and said, "I've eaten very well, teacher." Suddenly, Min paused and opened the conversation. "Come to it. There's something I want to tell you." He looked at Sung-gu, who was calmly enjoying his meal, and started. "Every weekend, the city hall staff comes to check on the situation." He was suspicious. "Check on the situation?" Min sat down, facing Nabi, and said, "Airport can receive guests. But they check to see if it causes any harm or danger to the citizens. That's why they come to investigate." This made her look at him with a puzzled expression. Sung-gu scratched his face, explaining, "Last time I wasn't quite sure, but they came to talk about how to support the returnees." Hearing that, Min patted Nabi's head and laughed heartily, saying, "Because she's a worker." Then he stood up and said, "The returnees are victims of the gate accident. They behave very well. There are many cases where people are brought to this world feeling quite lost." Sung-gu smiled warmly and replied, "Behaving like that is the right thing to do." "So good." Suddenly, Min looked back. He watched Sung-gu, who was thoughtfully clearing the cups, and wondered, "Are the people coming for the inspection today also returnees? I hope there won't be any incidents." The sunset began to fall. Nabi hurried outside, happily singing while waving the broom to clean up. From out of nowhere, Seo Eunha appeared and leaned in close to whisper, "Hey." Startled, Nabi immediately jolted upright, let out a loud cry, and waved its broom in frustration, scolding, "What the heck? Why would you just pop up like that?" Seeing this, he scratched his head awkwardly, apologizing. "Sorry, my profession is just a bit unique. Did I scare you?" Seo Eunha awkwardly offered a greeting. "I'm really happy to meet an aeropost. But I apologize." Hearing this, Nabi stopped in its tracks, staring intently at him with curiosity. "Wait, you know who we are?" Seo Eunha explained softly and kindly. "That's right. I want to become a hero too, you see." Nabi jumped for joy, exclaiming, "For real? It's an honor to meet you, a hero." Seo Eunha crouched down to meet its gaze and asked, "Are you working right now?" Hearing this, Nabi shot a sidelong glance at the closed door, reminding itself that when he's in his movie immersion mode, It must absolutely not be disturbed. Then, Nabi quickly turned back to him. Dejectedly, it replied, "We're already closed. Sorry about that." Hearing this, Seo Unha hung his head, looking gloomy and silent. Seeing him like that, it felt awkward, but then Nabi thumped its chest confidently and invited, "But if you're hungry, I'll cook for you as a personal favor, not as a restaurant service." Hearing that, Seo Unha's eyes immediately lit up, and he grabbed its hand. "An aeropost cooking for me? I'd be honored." Nabi broke into a cold sweat, its voice stuttering as it added, "Kimchi stew!" Seo Unha obediently crossed his arms, expressing, "I'd love some kimchi stew. That might be a bit much for a cat, though." Seeing this, Nabi immediately turned around and clutched its head in panic. It knew how to cook, but it was still quite unfamiliar with kimchi. Nabi scrambled to bring over a chair and nimbly hopped up onto it. Then, Nabi carefully sliced the meat into thin pieces. It looked at the cups of ingredients, thinking, basic ingredients, kimchi, pork leg meat. Nabi solemnly poured the ingredients into the pot. Looking at the boiling water, it gave itself instructions. First, cook the meat broth. Suddenly, Nabi rested its chin on its hand, looking miserable. So far, so easy. But what next? It looked at the 3 cups containing salted shrimp, salt, and sugar, lost in thought. I have no idea how to season this. But then, it hastily dumped everything in at once. After that, Nabi wiped away its sweat, feeling optimistic. That's gotta be it, right? Just add some vegetables and it should be fine, probably. Suddenly, it froze, standing bolt upright. Nabi picked up an onion, its eyes sparkling with resolve. Adding onions, too. Can't go wrong with that. Though usually people add green onions. But then, Nabi slumped to the floor, dejected. It muttered gloomily, "Something feels off." Seo Yunha leaned in, intrigued, and agreed, "I think so too." Looking at the pot of kimchi stew, he stammered his assessment. Something about it just isn't right. Seo Yunha sat down, looking disappointed. This is basically kimchi porridge. But then he smiled to reassure it. "Even so, I appreciate your good intentions." Suddenly, the door swung open. Seonggu poked his head out. "Huh? You don't look like a customer. Who are you?" It hugged itself and replied, "This is a visitor from Terra." Seo Yunha stood up nimbly to introduce himself. "My apologies. I am Park Seo Yunha, a returnee. A returnee is someone who has been taken to another world, much like a protagonist." Seonggu looked at him, deep in thought, assessing his gaunt, haggard face. Like men, he must have had a really tough time on Terra. Quickly, he tied on his apron, full of understanding. "I get it now. You want some kimchi stew, don't you?" Seo Yunha hurriedly said. "The shop is closed, so I didn't mean to bother you." Seonggu walked over, friendly, and explained, "It's all right. This is a place that runs on my whims anyway. It's like a kite flying in the wind." He smiled gently and carried the food tray inside, suggesting, "Eat the dish I've made instead of Nabi's." He awkwardly replied, "Yes." Seonggu walked, mulling over the first meal for a returnee. He rolled up his sleeves, feeling energized, telling himself, "I absolutely must treat him well." Seonggu stood at the kitchen table and tied the apron around his waist. Hai used a knife to slice the meat into pieces. The front leg pork, often called shoulder meat, was sliced quickly by Seonggu. The sound of the knife hitting the cutting board echoed with a rhythmic clack-clack. After finishing the slicing, he lifted the board. Even though it's cheap, you can't underestimate these parts. They're a bit chewy, but that's exactly why the flavor is so good. Seonggu poured the sliced meat into a large pan and quickly turned on the stove. While stirring the pan with his hand, Seonggu thought to himself, "If you stir-fry it, the meat will definitely taste better." While he was cooking, Nabi quietly took a step forward, then stood from afar to watch. Its eyes twinkled as it observed every movement Seonggu made. While stirring the meat with a wooden ladle, he spoke up, "Stop hiding. Come on out, I'll teach you." Seonggu stirred the food slowly and explained each step. Drop the front leg meat into the hot oil, then add the kimchi and stir-fry it. After that, he scooped a spoonful of soybean paste. The golden yellow paste looked very appetizing. Seonggu added the spoon to the pan and continued, "Add soybean paste to reduce the pork smell." Nabi observed intently, nodding to show it understood. He continued, "You can use alcohol, but some people often skip this step. Besides, there's plenty of garlic in the kimchi, so you can use that as a substitute too." Nabi clasped its hands together, its face excited. It seemed to have remembered everything Seonggu said. Nabi turned to ask, "So, Adding soybean paste is so that people who are sensitive can eat it too, right? Seong-gu smiled and explained, some religions don't allow the use of alcohol, so people often use garlic in kimchi instead. After saying that, he added the pre-sliced garlic into the pan. Seong-gu continued by adding a spoonful of white seasoning into the pan. In no time, he had finished making the dish. Seong-gu spoke up, this should be good. Next to him, Nabi was excitedly writing down the recipe in a small notebook. Just underline it and add a star and that's it. It meowed happily. Now I can make kimchi stew too. Seong-gu smiled and replied, try making it next time. The tray of food was quickly set out. Steam rose in thick clouds. Seo Eun-ha stared blankly at the food neatly arranged on the tray. He looked up and spoke to Seong-gu. The food tray was set down quickly, with hot steam rising from it. Seon-han stared blankly at the neatly arranged food, then looked up and spoke to Seong-gu. Seems like I'm not the only one craving this. You too, huh? He wiped his hands on his apron and replied, weird, isn't it? I don't know about back on Earth, but ever since I got to this world, I've been dying for a home-cooked meal. Seo Eun-han nodded in agreement. I get it, I totally get it. He slowly scooped up a spoonful of kimchi stew and put it in his mouth. As soon as the flavor hit his tongue, his eyes sparkled. Yes, this is it. Images of trays neatly arranged on a table flashed through Seo Eun-han's mind. He chewed, tears welling up, the taste of home. Hot, salty tears rolled down both sides of his face. I was overwhelmed with emotion, thinking, I'm finally back. Before long, the meal was over. Seo Eun-han had finished every last bit. He began to tell his story. I've been on Terra for 13 years now. Seo Eun-gu stood opposite him, arms crossed, lost in thought. 13 years. Seo Eun-han despairingly covered his face with both hands and continued, it's been 6 years here too. Hearing that, Seo Eun-gu sighed, thinking to himself, for him it's 45 years there but only 9 years here. This place really has no rules, does it? Seo Eun-han looked up and mentioned his level. I'm a rank 5 hunter. Seo Eun-gu rested his chin on his hand, looking thoughtful. A veteran, huh? Are you a silver-ranked explorer? He quickly admitted it. Exactly. After saying that, Seo Eun-han stood up and turned toward the glass window. This place is different from Terra. The system for dealing with monster gates is perfectly set up here. Seo Eun-han's face was unreadable as he added, it just makes me miss Terra even more. This surprised Seo Eun-gu. Wait, so you didn't come back because you wanted to? He spoke the truth bluntly. While exploring an underground dungeon, I was hit by an exile spell. Gu was stunned. You didn't choose to come back? You were forced out by a spell? The truth about dimensional exile spells is that the victim is forcibly ejected from that dimension. Seo Eun-gu spoke up. If you're from Earth, you get exiled back to Earth. When you end up on Earth, he rested his hands on his hips, you're incredibly lucky. Seo Eun-han curled in on himself, hearing this. For me, it wasn't like that. He fell silent. His eyes showed clear sorrow. Seo Eun-gu realized something. So that's it. That place was your home, wasn't it, Seo Eun-han? Seo Eun-han replied, I have a wife and a daughter waiting for me there. He closed his eyes, reminiscing. 13 years. Enough time to change a whole homeland. Seo Eun-han remembered his wife and daughter happily waving goodbye to him. Thinking of that, Seo Eun-han collapsed in agony, sobbing uncontrollably. Nabi, seeing this, worriedly reached out with a cloth to wipe his tears, its own eyes welling up as well. Seo Eun-gu, witnessing this scene, felt conflicted and turned away. He looked at his own hand and spoke, Do you want me to take you back there? Both Seo Eun-han and Nabi were left speechless. Seo Eun-gu calmly repeated his question. I asked, would you like me to send you back to Terra? Seo Eun-han slammed his hand onto the table, asking urgently, is that even possible? I've wanted to go back every single day. Seo Eun-gu gave a faint smile. All right then. He snapped his fingers, and a dimensional portal appeared right at Seo Eun-han's feet. Blinding light surged upward. He stared at the portal in shock. What is this? With Seo Eun-han's panicked expression, Seo Eun-gu just smiled and said, It was a pleasure meeting you. As soon as he finished, he fell into the other dimension. Seo Eun-han let out a terrified scream, and just seconds later, the portal slowly closed. Seo Eun-gu sighed and clapped his hands together. I really hate seeing people cry. Nabi pushed the chair over and asked, Is that really okay? If you shift dimensions on your own, the goddess... Ignoring its worry, Seo Eun-gu just casually turned away and cleaned his ear. He wanted to go back, so I sent him back. The goddess can do whatever she wants. I'll deal with the consequences on that side myself. Nabi was speechless. So, you just sent him off because you found it annoying? He walked away while giving orders. Either way, good work, Nabi. Now let's close up. It happily accepted the order. Understood. Nabi held 2 food trays up high and spoke, "These failed experiments. I'll go feed them to the pudding slime in the basement." Seo Eun-gu heard this and grabbed the tray, saying, "No way, I'm eating this." Hearing that, it reached out to take it back. "Master, don't!" He smiled brightly. "It's fine." A fragment of memory appeared in Seo Eun-gu's mind. In a prison cell, he was locked away. Seo Eun-gu sat silently, head bowed against the wall. Suddenly, someone appeared and knocked on the bars. John brought over a food tray and spoke up. "Joe, do you know today is the 200th day since you've been in this arena?" Seo Eun-gu frowned and replied, "John, why would I want to remember something like that?" Hearing that, John let out a sigh. He set the food tray down at Seung-gu's cell and said, "That's kimchi stew, right?" Seung-gu took the tray and asked, "Where did you get this?" John replied casually, "People in this world call kimchi a necessity, so I bought it for $1. When I told them I wanted to make kimchi stew, this is what they gave me." Seung-gu chuckled. "Kimchi as a necessity, huh? It's a masterpiece, that's what it is." He opened the pot lid, but looking inside, he corrected himself. "John, this isn't kimchi stew." John looked surprised, so Seung-gu continued, "It's kimchi porridge." John scratched his head, feeling helpless. "I got scammed, didn't I?" Seung-gu didn't look disappointed. He just laughed. "Thanks, though. I actually wanted to eat this." John winked and gave him a thumbs up. "Glad to hear that. Eat plenty, and make sure to survive until next time." Seung-gu slowly ate spoonful by spoonful. Back in reality, he looked at the pot and sighed. He thought he had added green onions, but it turned out to be regular onions. Well, at least I know now. Finishing his meal, Seung-gu ate attentively. Suddenly he turned toward the door, thinking to himself, "I'm pretty lucky, aren't I?" A thought crossed his mind. Throwing people from this world into an arena for fun, compared to the rage of those nobles screaming for blood. John's image appeared in his mind, and Seung-gu remembered the kindness of good people like him. He quickly finished the porridge and rice. Seung-gu calmly set down his spoon, silently reflecting. If John hadn't appeared back then, I would have become a monster who only knows how to kill, not a hero. With that, he shrugged. Tastes good, even if it'll give me a stomachache later. The next morning, at the central market, it was crowded with people. Every stall was busy with customers browsing and buying. From food stalls to fruit stands, Seung-gu and Nabi wandered around, snacking as they went. He chewed on a hot dog and looked around. This place is just like it used to be, even if some parts are a bit worn down. Seung-gu turned to Nabi, who was eating next to him. "Do you want anything else?" She happily replied, "Let's finish the hot dog first, then we'll see." Seung-gu nodded and looked around. His eyes landed on the spice jars displayed on the shelves. Essential items at a traditional market. He glanced at the pre-packed food boxes waiting to be processed. As he walked past the stalls, he truly felt immersed in the atmosphere. There were so many goods on display. He looked at Nabi, who was excitedly running ahead. "Going to the market is definitely more fun than a supermarket, right? So, what do you want to buy?" She chirped, "Let's go find some treasure." So the two of them started shopping. They browsed through a shop for a while and then moved on. "Nothing here that catches my eye." Suddenly, Nabi spotted something in the distance. She quickly headed toward it. The action caught Seung-gu's attention. Nabi pointed at a massive clam in front of her. "How about this one?" He touched the outer shell. "Is this a clam? I've never seen one this big before." After observing it, Seung-gu realized something. "Wait, this looks familiar," he said in surprise. "Could it be a haragigas?" Seung-gu stared at the clam in silence. Haragigas were clams that giants used for recreation. He turned to the shopkeeper standing nearby. "Ma'am, could I ask you about this clam?" She waved her hand, acting dismissive. "I'm not even sure. My husband just picked it up somewhere and brought it home." Seung-gu was stunned. "He picked this up?" Looking at it, this thing must weigh over 200 kilograms, right? Seeing his shocked expression, she laughed. "My husband is considered quite the strong man among hunters." Seung-gu touched the rough shell. It held the grandeur of time. It was definitely a haragigas. After a moment of thought, he told the woman, I'll take this clam. She patted the shell and frowned, giving him some well-meaning advice. Young man, no matter what you try, you won't be able to open this. It's only good for decoration. Sungu didn't mind. He pointed to a tray of fish nearby and said, It's fine. I'll take 10 mackerels and this clam. The woman was surprised. 10? You're really buying a lot. Sungu scratched his head sheepishly. I run a small food stall, you see. She frowned and said loudly, What? Are you crazy, young man? Why buy so little? If you run a food stall, 10 fish aren't even enough to show off. She turned around and started quickly picking out more items for him. Here, take this and this too. He laughed helplessly while Nabi clapped happily. Soon, Sungu received the clam and gently placed it on his shoulder. He turned and nodded to the woman. Thank you. I'll be back again. Nabi also waved goodbye happily. The woman replied generously, You look even stronger than my husband. A while later, they returned to Sungu's kitchen. He stood with his hands on his hips and stretched. He rubbed his chin, looking at the clam. What an alluring ingredient. But how on earth should I prepare this? He lightly tapped the shell and said to Nabi, First things first, let's try to open it. She quickly gave him a thumbs up. Great idea! No sooner said than done. Sungu used both hands to grip the sides of the clam. Because of the sea sediment, it was very hard to pry open. However, he frowned and focused all his strength. Sungu used his force to snap the clam open decisively. Once the shell was successfully opened, he finished the job. Sungu and Nabi stared inside, stunned. Oh my God, the glossy flesh of the scallop lay exposed before them. Sungu couldn't help but marvel that the scallop was even bigger than Nabi. Nabi agreed, You're right. Sungu quickly grabbed a knife and rolled up his sleeves. If it's a scallop, it has to be served as sashimi. With his sharp blade, he swiftly sliced off a piece of meat and dipped it into some red sauce. He chewed happily, muttering, Man, I could really go for some soju right now. After eating, he decided, Well, with this much meat and those organs, let's try making some clam chowder. Clam chowder, a North American-style scallop soup, a true masterpiece with such a clean, delicate flavor. As he imagined it, he nodded to himself. Dinner will be scallop sashimi with soju. And tomorrow morning, I'll cure my hangover with the clam chowder. Absolutely perfect. He flashed a sinister smile. A nutritional treasure for hunters. Sungu pointed to a large black section inside the scallop. This right here is the poison sac. This shriveled black thing is a poison sac filled with incredibly deadly toxins. Eating it will kill you, but if you survive, you might just develop a resistance to poison, he said with a dangerous grin. Just looking at it, you can already see its amazing potential. Nabi looked on helplessly, thinking, My master looks so scary. Sungu ignored him and kept muttering, So those pathetic weaklings can eat it every day. I'll process it into something shelf-stable. The moment he said that, Hang Hyuk, far away, suddenly shivered. Where was that killing intent coming from? As he moved his arm holding the knife, he said, All right, let's get started. Just then, someone pushed the door open. Min walked in with a bright smile. Good morning, master. As he turned, Sungu was still holding the poison sac. Nabi waved happily at him. Mine looked curiously at Sungu's work. Working so early in the morning? Looks pretty interesting, doesn't it? Sungu replied without stopping. Just processing this clam. Mine was surprised to hear that. Is that the scallop discovered in the river? Is it actually edible? Sungu stopped what he was doing and stared blankly at Min. He stood up, puzzled. Wait, you can find Haragigus in the river? Min quickly nodded. Of course. Sungu placed his knife on the kitchen counter and spoke up. That sounds interesting. Tell me more about it. Mine held up 2 fingers. About 2 days ago, we got reports from residents hearing loud noises coming from the sewer drains, he said with a serious expression. Hunters were dispatched to that location. Mine recounted the incident, saying they had seen a very small dimensional rift. Sungu fell silent, then murmured, If that's the case. He paused, then continued, In the near future, a dimensional gate might open there. Sungu's gaze turned sharp as he realized the implications. Sungu and Min looked at each other in silence. Meanwhile, Nabi slowly brought over a tray of sliced scallops and set it on the table. Scallop sashimi served! Min picked up his chopsticks. Sungu asked suspiciously, A crack acting like an omen before a gate opens, and it happened at a sewer drain? Mine confirmed, That's exactly right. Setting his chopsticks down, Min added. Because we don't know how the situation might escalate, a special response team has already been sent there. Sungu let out a sigh. No wonder I haven't seen Baek Kong lately. Min picked up a slice of scallop and looked at it. Master, your skills are incredible. You sliced this so thin you can see right through it. Sungu turned to grab some condiments. You need the right sauce for it to taste good. Do you want vinegar or soy sauce with wasabi? Mine quickly replied, give me soy sauce, no wasabi. Sungu held the bottle, lost in thought. A crack, huh? Sungu frowned, deep in thought. Memories flooded back. Images of Seonghan appeared. There were people who had bypassed the laws of time and returned to Earth. He kept thinking, and finding Haragagas in the river. Sungu mused. The species that usually eats Haragagas is the giantess tribe, arrogant and extremely violent. With strength exceeding level 90, this crack is definitely related to them. He gripped the table tightly. This is too strange. To think of all these coincidences happening at once. As he thought about it, his face suddenly turned pale.
Could it be? He whispered to himself. It feels like this is all because of me.
Elsewhere, in a row of tents, Hang Hyuk was inside his sleeping bag. He groaned, frowning. I seriously can't take this anymore. Ji-hyun, standing nearby, replied coldly, then quit. He grew angry. Is there really no other way to change this? She said nonchalantly. If you can't write a resignation letter because you're lying there whining in your sleeping bag like a bug, I can write it for you whenever you want. Hang Hyuk shouted in anger. Hey! Ji-hyun turned her head, her gaze piercing. I have tried for a whole month to respect you, but this is truly impossible. Feeling her killing intent, Hang Hyuk shook like a leaf. Trembling with tears in his eyes, he tried to complain. Is it really that bad? Why do I have to spend my days off sitting under a sewer drain like this? Trembling with tears in his eyes, he complained. This is too much. Why do I have to spend my day off sitting in a sewer like this? This doesn't feel like a first-order mission at all, Ji-hyun sighed in frustration. Then what should a first order be doing? Hang Hyuk asked, jumping up quickly. He threw his arms out, causing his sleeping bag to slide down, and declared dramatically, We should be taking down monsters in style while live streaming it. John shut him down without hesitation. You can just quit this job and go join a game show instead. Seeing that she wouldn't play along, he went silent for a moment. Hang Hyuk sulkily crawled back into his sleeping bag and turned away. Forget it. I'm not talking to you anymore. Ji-hyun cursed under her breath. Are you a child or what? She turned her gaze forward, where a dense wave of dark energy was pouring out. Ji-hyun sighed wearily. Hang Hyuk was right. How much longer was she supposed to wait here? Ji-hyun glanced back at him, still sulking, though it was. As military personnel, we have no choice but to do this guard duty. Thinking this, she reached out to shake Hang Hyuk. Go up there and call the relief team! But before Ji-hyun could finish, a loud noise erupted, and she turned around in a panic to see where the rumbling was coming from. The dimensional rift was growing larger, and dark energy was pouring out faster. Ji-hyun screamed in terror, Emergency! It's an emergency! And the soldiers in armor appeared. They gripped their rifles tightly. Hang Hyuk tensed up and sprang to his feet, gritting his teeth. Damn it! He quickly looked at the wall where the gate level was displayed. Unfortunately, before that terrifying power, the gate level indicator had shattered some time ago. Seeing this, Ji-hyun was horrified, cold sweat streaming down her face. The machine is broken. She collapsed to her knees, devastated. Rank or higher? Ji-hyun's whole body trembled, and she despairingly covered her mouth. She couldn't even begin to judge it. Ji-hyun stuttered. Are we? Is this city going to vanish without a trace? The armored soldiers were gripped by fear as they watched the dimensional gate expand. As she fell into despair, Hang Hyuk stood behind her and placed a hand on her shoulder. He said solemnly, Before it opens fully, someone has to go in there. Hang Hyuk smiled nonchalantly. Emergency protocol for a G3 rift. As soon as he said this, he and Ji-hyun looked at each other and said in unison, Use the stabilizer. Stabilize the rift to stop it from expanding and hold out until reinforcements arrive. Hang Hyuk continued. We need to temporarily block it now. She panicked, wanting to stop the entire attack team. That's more likely, he said with a laugh. Min isn't here. If Min isn't here, you people will just get in my way. With that, Hang Hyuk placed both hands on Ji-hyun's shoulders. He spoke with a serious tone. I'll take the stabilizer and go in there to adjust the rift. She worriedly started to say, but then Ji-hyun saw the look on Hang Hyuk's face. Listen carefully. I gave specific instructions. There's a hunter's diner on the outskirts of Changgeonggung Street. Explain the situation to the owner and bring that person here as fast as you can. She swallowed the words she wanted to say. Ji-hyun answered blankly, "Understood." Hang Hyuk patted her shoulder and added, "Say my name and beg that person to help. If you want to live, that's the only way." Then he shouted, "Go! That's an order!" Ji-hyun saluted seriously. "Understood." A second later, she bolted to carry out her mission. Hang Hyuk's hands shook as he pulled a pack of cigarettes from his pocket, his face pale as he raised his rifle. "Damn it!" A soldier nearby saw this, and handed him a fresh pack of cigarettes. "Hang Hyuk, you look pretty cool today, you know?" Even though he was terrified, he tried to joke, "You guys are recording this, right?" The soldiers just chuckled awkwardly. "Yeah, we are." Hang Hyuk lit his cigarette and frowned, warning them, "You guys just need to catch whatever jumps out of there." As soon as he finished, he grabbed his weapon and ran toward the dimensional gate. "I'm going in." Hang Hyuk didn't hesitate and jumped into the dangerous dimensional rift. Outside, bullets rained down continuously. The soldiers fired at the monsters together. "Keep the defensive line. If we get pushed back, we're finished." Among a swarm of flying creatures, a giant, turtle-like red monster was aggressively charging at them. The bullets didn't even leave a scratch on it. Not even a little. A soldier gritted his teeth. "It won't stop at all." As he bent down to grab more ammunition, he suddenly looked up, right in front of him. The turtle monster was standing right there. Its massive body loomed over the soldier, and without hesitation it reached out its claws to attack. Seeing the claws about to hit him, the soldier could only helplessly squeeze his eyes shut. "Mom!" Just then someone appeared and drew a sword. Seong-gu slashed the turtle monster, shattering it. Blood splattered everywhere. After successfully taking out the monster, he landed calmly. Seeing their leader killed, the swarm of flying creatures scattered in fear. Seong-gu silently sheathed his sword, standing tall amidst the spraying blood. The soldiers were stunned to see Seong-gu defeat the turtle monster so easily, their mouths agape. Seong-gu remained silent, using his sword to block the blood from splashing onto him. With an expression as indifferent as if nothing had happened, the soldiers still hadn't recovered from the recent events. "What? What on earth is happening over there?" After taking care of the monster, Seong-gu stood there staring at the open spatial gate. A moment later, in the blink of an eye, he dashed straight into the portal without a shred of hesitation. He moved so fast that he created a massive gust of wind. The wind was so cold that the soldiers struggled to stay on their feet. When they opened their eyes, he was already gone. They panicked, completely at a loss. Did someone just confirm the monster was eliminated? Check the surveillance footage to see if anything else got out. Meanwhile, in the spatial dimension on the other side, Hang Hyuk was huddled in a corner, trembling in fear, even though the energy barrier was already set up. I was terrified, clutching his head and hiding behind a pillar. "Am I going to die here?" Behind him, a group of massive giantes were stomping around, trying to force their way out of the spatial gate. As soon as they tried to move forward, they slammed into the energy barrier Hang Hyuk had erected. The giantes looked at each other, confused. "Why can't we move any further?" "I don't know, just smash it!" Immediately, one of them swung its fist with all its might, punching the energy barrier directly in front of them. Hang Hyuk, nearby, was shivering with fear. They're attacking the barrier with their bare hands? The whole group of giantes started pummeling the barrier. The force of their attack sent debris flying everywhere. Hang Hyuk covered his head, trembling in terror. "Come on, that annoying returner!" Because they were using so much force, one of the giantes accidentally elbowed a support pillar, causing it to shatter instantly. A rock flew toward where Hang Hyuk was sitting. He looked up, dazed, and suddenly the rock crashed right where he had been sitting just a second before. Luckily, he managed to scramble away in time. The group of giantes suddenly stopped and turned their heads. What was that noise? Hang Hyuk heard them and frantically clamped his hands over his mouth. Anxiously, he peered over to check the situation, only to find one of the giantes glaring straight at him. He felt completely hopeless. His face went pale. Anyone could see it. They had spotted him. "Looks like the guy who put up the barrier is right there. Crush him, or better yet, grind him into dust." With nowhere left to run, Hang Hyuk gritted his teeth and swung his arms. Damn it! He pulled out 2 guns and fired a barrage of bullets at the giantes. "You really think you can kill me that easily?" Unfortunately, because of their massive build, the giantes' skin was incredibly tough. The bullets hitting them felt like nothing more than a light tickle. One of them, without a word, lifted its massive foot, and the others followed suit, aiming directly at Hang Hyuk. Just as they were about to stomp on him suddenly, Seonggu appeared, casually flying right through the energy barrier. Seeing this, Hang Hyuk felt a wave of relief and slumped onto the ground. He's here. Seonggu landed softly. He silently reached for the hilt of the sword at his waist. A moment later, he gave a faint smile and drew his blade. Without hesitation, he slowly walked toward the group of Giantes. A dense, unmistakable murderous aura radiated from him. Seeing this, they were taken aback. What is that? Get out of the way! Unfortunately, before the Giantes could even retreat, Seonggu slashed a few times with his sword. In an instant, the whole group was lying scattered across the ground. Hong Hyuk watched, eyes wide and cold sweat drenching his face. He's even worse than a monster. Suddenly, Hong Hyuk remembered how he had treated Seonggu before and said fearfully, I actually gave that guy such a hard time. Seonggu glanced over at Hong Hyuk, who was cowering behind a wall. Seonggu threw something straight at him. It slammed into Hang Hyuk's forehead, causing him to cry out in pain and fall backward. With just that one hit, Hang Hyuk passed out cold. A huge bump rose on his forehead. Seonggu walked up to him, sat down, looked at the unconscious Hang Hyuk, and said, This guy, he was hiding and now he's just staring at me? Seonggu sighed, his expression speechless. Did he really think I was going to kill all these giant monsters? Seonggu looked at the group of Giantes he had just taken care of nearby. He continued, Or are they planning to try and conquer Earth? He picked up a large sack. First, let's just collect these resources and artifacts for the inventory. Seonggu hoisted Hang Hyuk onto his shoulder. And this brat, too. Without hesitation, he tossed him back into the spatial gate. If I throw him gently, the hunters will know it's him and take him home. Seonggu chuckled and shrugged. That's that sorted. The next morning at Seonggu's shop, Nabi shrieked in panic, Master, save me! A group of people were excitedly touching her. Such a cute kitten! Look here! Let me touch your front paw! Seonggu stared at the scene, completely dumbfounded, not knowing what to say. Nabi reached out, calling for help. I'm talking to you, can't you hear me? I was a bit speechless. So if I leave you alone for 1 second, this happens? Seonggu stepped forward, intending to stop them. Excuse me, customers, this cat is an employee of ours. Just then, Ji-hyun approached and grabbed his arm. Are you the shop owner? Seonggu replied, dazed. Yes, that's me. She introduced herself and said seriously, I'm Hwang Ji-hyun, an assistant for the first order. Don't worry, I'm just here to ask a huge favor. Seonggu was more than a little surprised to hear that. He had just returned from the sewers, and this was what he got. Hong Hyuk had reached out through Ji-hyun to ask for Seonggu's help, but in the meantime, Seonggu felt something was off and had dashed off beforehand. He didn't explain, simply pulling out a chair and gesturing for her to sit. Then Seonggu paused for a moment and said to Ji-hyun, who was anxiously wiping away her tears, Let's talk. After Ji-hyun explained everything, Seonggu looked at her and started, So, to sum it up, he raised his index finger and continued, Bae Hang Hyuk arrogantly charged into a spatial rift and now he's asking for my help? She replied anxiously, It's an emergency situation. Only an S rank can enter the gate after all. Ji-ungu heard that, turned his head and chuckled to himself. Pretty good, huh? Baek Hang Hyo. I really do admire that guy. Ji-hyun looked blankly at him, not understanding what he meant. Seonggu gave a friendly smile. Don't worry, there'll be good news soon. Just breathe easy, okay? I thought seriously. It seems he still hasn't received any word from the branch. Seonggu stared at Nabi, who was still being petted by those people, and said, As for emergency situations, the other side is in much more of a bind than we are. It angrily swatted this man's hand away. Meow, I told you not to touch the tail. The man, despite being swatted, just laughed delightedly. So cute, that round little tail. Seonggu couldn't help but get annoyed looking at the scene. Does this place look like a cat cafe to you? They didn't even order food. What kind of customers were these? Right after that, he bluntly kicked them out of the shop. Get going! The group frowned at Seonggu. What the hell, man? Is it okay to treat customers so rudely? Seonggu quickly shut the door and turned back to look at Ji-hyun. So, you're a hunter? Ji-hyun replied seriously. That's right. Even though I work in an office, I'm an awakened. Seonggu let out a sinister laugh. A hunter, huh? Fantastic. She hesitated, looking at him. It meant, and Seonggu was petting Nabi's head and told it, Go get some rest. before turning to address Ji-hyun. If you're at a restaurant, you have to eat. Seeing Sung-gu wanted to cook, she panicked and tried to stop him. No, the current situation, we can't just sit here and eat. He remained silent, tied his apron, and thought to himself, didn't I already say everything that needed to be said? Sung-gu clenched his fist. Why haven't the number of hunter customers increased these past few days? He pondered. Even if it has the effect of boosting stats, the problem is the terrible taste and the fact that the body doesn't actually feel the effects. Jae-ung-gu thought as he walked, but the recovery food response wasn't bad either. It's perfect for grabbing the interest of tired, overworked modern hunters. He slammed his hand down on the table where Ji-hyun was sitting. So first of all, we need bait products. Sung-gu smiled and asked, judging by how you look lately, you've got signs of a cold and you get chills down your spine every now and then, right? Ji-hyun answered honestly. I've been working overtime lately and sleeping on the floor in the sewers. Hearing that, he turned, checking her out from every angle. Looks like you've caught a cold chill from overworking and thinking too much. Your neck and shoulders are cold too. Ji-hyun, seeing this, said helplessly, can I ask, this is a restaurant, right? Why does it feel like a pharmacy? After a moment of thought, Sung-gu turned away. I have a menu specifically for people with a chill. Wait here a second. Ji-hyun couldn't help but frown, evaluating him. Is he selling medicine? He tapped the seashell with his hand. These things are... Seong-gu collected them from those giant monsters earlier. Ji-hyun, watching from afar, felt stressed and bit her nails. How can he look so unbothered after hearing what I told him? If Baek Hang-hyuk asked for him, he must be a very strong person. Ji-hyun opened her phone. Still no word from the branch. The portal opened, which means someone must have already taken care of it. She frowned, looking toward Sung-gu. Ji-hyun watched him closely as he butchered the clam in the distance. It must be him, she thought worriedly. Basic guide to dealing with regression type R. First, handle with care as if dealing with a bomb, and be respectful as if they were a human. Just then, Sung-gu spoke up, asking Ji-hyun, you've finished thinking, right? Ji-hyun nodded slowly. Eating is probably part of the guide too, I guess. Sung-gu quickly dumped the ingredients into the pan, added wine, and used a large ladle to stir it all together. He grabbed a bowl of clams. Seeing this, Ji-hyun couldn't help but be curious. It looks delicious. Is he cooking with clams? Sung-gu replied as he poured the bowl of clams into the pan. That's right. This is clam meat soup. Soup with clam meat? Ji-hyun was surprised. But why is this clam meat so big? He laughed and said, it's called a haragagus. Have you ever seen one before? Hearing that, she was stunned. I live in the city, so I'm not really into seafood. Then, Ji-hyun's eyes landed on the shell in the distance. She turned pale. Wait a minute. Isn't that a monster clam? Ji-hyun jumped up in a panic. Is this crazy person feeding me monster meat? Sung-gu, seeing her reaction, looked bewildered. Is something wrong? Ji-hyun said tensely. Nothing. I'm not eating that. She turned away, terrified. She frantically ran her hands through her hair. A regression type is like a bomb. If I refuse, it's over. After weighing the pros and cons for a moment, Ji-hyun sat back down. She shook her head and said, it's nothing. Sung-gu, focused on cooking, started mumbling the clam cooking recipe to himself. Step 1. Sauté garlic, potatoes, and bacon. Step 2. Add flour, then stir the potatoes and clam meat. After that, pour in the milk and broth. He used a ladle to scoop milk into the pan. Minoto milk has less sugar than regular milk and higher vitamin and fat content. Sung-gu stirred the pan slowly, applying magic to the hot pan. Add the milk, stir, then add a layer of magic coating to the ingredients, then add different types of magic and stir so it doesn't burn. Sung-gu used a spoon to taste a bit. Afterward, he nodded happily. All right, and so a delicious meal is complete. This is fire-breathing clam soup. It's still warm and has restorative powers, Sung-woo said, placing the tray in front of Ji-hyun and cheerfully telling her to take her time eating. Ji-hyun replied, breaking into a cold sweat. You're moving so fast! Sung-woo crossed his arms and explained, it's a giant clam, that's why it looks like that. But in reality, it's just clam and milk porridge. He picked up a spice jar and asked, shall I sprinkle some cilantro on it? Panicked, Ji-hyun refused. No need. Who knows if that's something like monster skin or what? Even though she was terrified, she scooped up a spoonful. Ji-hyun squeezed her eyes shut and put the spoon in her mouth. Sung-woo watched her go silent for a moment, confused as to what was happening. Ji-hyun looked at the spot with sparkling eyes and remarked, "It feels so warm. It's like being frozen to death on a winter night in my imagination." Ji-hyun continued happily. "And then, while I'm freezing in the middle of a snowstorm, I find a warm house and get to warm up in front of a fireplace." Ji-hyun ate a second bite, then broke into a sweat. She used her hands to undo her buttons, placed her blazer on the chair next to her, and fanned her face to cool down. Seeing this, Sung-woo laughed and asked, "Do you feel hot?" Ji-hyun fanned her face and replied, "Yeah, it's really hot." She smiled happily at him. "Eating monster meat for the first time. It's actually pretty good." Jong-hoon clasped his hands together, his elbows resting on the table. At the Korean branch of the Hunter Association, during the S-Class store hearing, Hang Hyuk stood with his hands behind his back. His eyes darted away. "I understand, sir. I know what you want to say, and I was just about to say it myself." Instantly, the branch manager of the Korean Hunter Association, Lee Jong-hoon, furrowed his brows severely. "Then, this unidentified monster human?" Hearing this, Hang Hyuk quickly cut the branch manager off. "He's not an unidentified monster human. He's the owner of the Hunter restaurant." No sooner had he finished speaking than Jong-hoon wore a stern expression again and added, "So what kind of restaurant owner clears out 10 monsters judged to be S-Class in just 5 minutes? But Hang Hyuk didn't hesitate to interrupt the branch manager. He slowly lowered his gaze and spoke. "I'd like to make a correction. It wasn't just judged to be S-Class. They were officially S-Class or higher. The measuring device exploded, didn't it? I don't know how many times I have to say it." Hearing this, Jong-hoon's eyes practically shot sparks. He was furious. "Is this brat messing with me?" Then, he subtly adjusted his collar. "Let me ask again. Returner number 21. Is it true that the brave restaurant owner wiped out 10 S-Class monsters?" At the same time, Hang Hyuk couldn't help but let out a long yawn. "I already told you. I saw it with my own eyes. But if you still have doubts, how about you just consider it my catch, okay?" As soon as he finished, Jong-hoon looked stunned. "Do you have any idea how abnormal this is?" However, Hang Hyuk replied with extreme calm, "No, I don't." Instantly, Jong-hoon couldn't hold back anymore and growled loudly, "All the people with power so great that it can't be measured are currently in the city center, but this happened here. Does that seem normal to you, huh?" Hearing this, Hang Hyuk suddenly shrugged and leaned forward. "But branch manager, think about it carefully. Even until now, there are still people with unmeasurable power who haven't been discovered yet, right?" In their conversation, the young man seemed to be gaining the upper hand. "When he first arrived on Earth, he registered as a returner, right?" "That's right. If there are people who don't want to become returners affiliated with the association, it's normal that we wouldn't have met them, right?" That's right." A moment later, Hang Hyuk looked satisfied, crossing his arms in front of his chest. "So what? What's the big deal about someone with power opening a restaurant? As long as he's not doing anything bad, that's all that matters." Suddenly, he didn't hesitate to slam his hand down on the wooden table. Hang Hyuk leaned his face close to the other man's. "So this returner is exactly that kind of person." "That?" Mada Jong-hoon break into a cold sweat, hesitating. "That." At that moment, Hang Hyuk smirked and touched his chin. No one needs to be troubled by this. Decent people would never think about hiding. He didn't show any respect, turning his back and leaning against the edge of the table. People like that aren't the country's enemies. You shouldn't overthink it. Hearing this, Jong-hoon tilted his head and glanced at him. Everything in this world cannot simply be divided into enemies and allies. You can't just divide everyone into enemies and allies. His brows furrowed instinctively. He thought, if we run into an issue, there's no way I can fully trust people like that, just because they look like decent folk. This is about the safety and lives of the citizens. Hang Hyo didn't hesitate to point that out. Who could deny it? Besides, those at this branch manager's level or higher will naturally form their own judgments. He stared at the girl standing nearby with a mocking glint in his eyes. Regardless, this is the assessment from our core staff, and since it's crucial, make sure to underline it. As soon as the secretary finished speaking, Jong-hoon ground his teeth in rage, thinking, this little brat! Don't think I'm just going to let this slide. Just because of a single word? A single bead of sweat trickled down his cheek. What am I supposed to do about this? He remained lost in his own thoughts. Just like other nations, they've messed with a regressor they shouldn't have touched. And the result? There's no way I can let him blow this country to smithereens. Time ticked away. It was 12:20. Hang Hyo-asi glanced behind him, then quickly picked at his ear with a finger, his tone remarkably calm. "There's no other way. I'll report this to the higher-ups." As soon as he said that, he started digging in his ear again and added calmly, "Sure, go ahead and report it. Can I go now? I have urgent business to attend to." Hearing this, Jong-hun immediately questioned, "Urgent business? Where are you going?" "I have to investigate, patrol, and look out for the people." But he was met with a blunt, sarcastic retort. "The branch manager really isn't observant, is he? I have to go buy some land, obviously." As he said that, Jong-hun gasped in shock. At that very moment, Hang Hyo-osi leaned in close and whispered in his ear, "The strongest regressor in history is a restaurant owner, remember? As long as we're close to him, even if the world ends, we'll survive, right? The way I see it, land prices around there are about to skyrocket." Hearing that, Jong-hun's eyes widened with delight, and he replied, "True! Why didn't I think of that?" However, his attitude did a complete 180, and he exploded in anger, shouting, "Did you really think I'd say that? People are in danger, and you're talking about land?" At this point, Hang Hyo-ok could only clutch his head, which had a bump on it, and shed a tear. "I have to keep the people safe, but first, I have to keep my wallet safe." Meanwhile, Jong-hun still looked livid. "For heaven's sake, shut your mouth, you're driving me crazy." Elsewhere, a group of people in black coats moved forward, whispering to each other. "Is he really the restaurant owner? He actually saved the S-rank hunter, Baek Kang-hyo. Sounds a bit off, doesn't it?" Suddenly, one of them turned to their leader and asked, "Captain, is this really a restaurant run by a regressor? It looks so ordinary." Hearing this, Min immediately lowered his voice and warned them, "I've warned you all multiple times already. Make sure you don't do anything disrespectful." As soon as he finished, the others quickly put on a knowing look. "We're just common folk, sir. How could we ever be rude?" Exactly. The scene shifted to the dining area with the open kitchen. Seung-gu flashed a friendly smile and said, "Welcome." Instantly, a smirk appeared on Min's lips. "I've brought them here, teacher." Seeing this, Seung-gu quickly smiled back and gave a thumbs up. "Well done." Min couldn't help but cover his mouth as he let out a sigh of relief. "Thanks to you, teacher, I feel much better. Thank you so much." Hearing this, Seung-gu put his hands on his hips and beamed. "Thanks? What are you thanking me for?" Meanwhile, Min pulled out a chair to sit down and continued, "We couldn't really do anything to help you, so I thought the least we could do is help boost your restaurant's sales." This statement left the three people with him breaking into a cold sweat, rendered speechless. They began glancing around, whispering to each other. "I thought he'd look so intimidating. Why does he give off such a warm vibe? I expected him to be cold, like an assassin, but looking closely, he's just a regular restaurant owner. He's even a little bit handsome." The whole group stared at Seung-gu's refined face, endlessly praising him. "He's not just a little bit handsome." Suddenly, the three of them widened their eyes in pure shock. "Wait, is that an Arupus in the kitchen?" At that same moment, a cat was carefully carrying a food tray. A little while later, a nutritious meal was spread out on the table. The group's faces lit up with joy. "We'll enjoy the meal." As soon as they took their first bite, they were stunned. They couldn't help but exclaim, "So good!" Taiji immediately turned to the person next to him. Emotionally, he said, "Captain, if we keep eating food this good, we could crush all the monsters in existence." But his captain's reaction was as if he had absolutely zero interest. Even Min was taken aback, and Taiji just kept on overacting. Honestly, when food is that good, you have to call it a masterpiece. It made Min break into a cold sweat just watching him. That's right. After a long while, the 8 plates were stacked up high. Seung-gu crossed his arms over his chest, gave a faint smirk, and thought, "All right, 5 new marketing staff members secured." Without hesitation, he made the arrangements. Now they would head back to base and introduce them to the restaurant. Seung-gu was still lost in these pleasant thoughts, picturing how others would surely get curious and flock over. He stared at the people in front of him once more, his face flushing red as he realized he had to slowly get over his mental block about the ingredients being monsters. Furrowing his brows, a cunning smirk appeared on his lips. If they found out, he would make sure they couldn't handle eating such delicacies anymore. Elsewhere, a sudden piercing scream rang out. A man couldn't help but stare at his reflection, tearing up as he lamented, "My hair! A new day begins." The scorching sun beat down on the ground as Seung-gu strolled along the street, slowly raising a hand to shield his face from the harsh glare. Wait, it was freezing just a moment ago. Why is it so hot now? Sung-gu quickly glanced at the passers-by nearby. He gave a forced, awkward smile. I know, right? I'm boiling over here too. I then quickly fished his phone out of his pocket. So that's why one is supposed to check the weather forecast. When suddenly, something caught Seung-gu's attention. In front of him was a grocery store with a large sign. Seung-gu didn't hesitate to reach into the freezer, grabbed a random ice cream bar, and cracked a smile as he opened the wrapper. I immediately took his big bite, and as he chewed, Seung-gu reminisced, 45 years ago? No, 9 years ago. The 4 seasons were so distinct. Now the weather changes before a month even passes. I'm getting dizzy. Thinking this, he unconsciously lowered his gaze and muttered, It's tough, isn't it? Seung-gu couldn't help but wonder, the store is closed today, what should I do? At a building built as a movie theater, Seung-gu's eyes widened with excitement. Movies it is, what else? I took out a ticket and happily added, Lucky me, it starts in 10 minutes. Suddenly, a massive noise nearby caught Seung-gu's attention. In the middle of the bustling fair, the hawkers' voices kept booming, Cheap prices here, trading weapons here. Hearing this, Seung-gu immediately deduced, a flea market, huh? He turned his gaze toward a stall and recognized a familiar face. Nabi? Is that her? Seung-gu couldn't help but smirk. Already making friends? It looked like a little girl. Then he stared at his phone screen again. Oh man, it's time. I'll have to ask her after the movie. With those words, Seung-gu leisurely strolled toward the building. Meanwhile, Unha was wandering through the fair, her eyes sparkling with excitement, while Nabi stood before a food stall, curious. What is this dish? Seeing that, Unha once again showed a look of fascination. A chubby cat! She approached the creature from behind, covering her mouth as she exclaimed, So cute! I want to be friends with the kitty! Then Unha immediately grew sad and disappointed. What should I do? If it were Mom... Suddenly, an image of a powerful woman appeared, reminding Unha, Friends aren't scary at all. Just do whatever you can for them, and you'll be close in no time. At that, she quickly changed her attitude. Exactly. Unha happily approached the food stall, not hesitating to point at the food and order. 1 chicken skewer, please. A while later, Unha held a cooked chicken skewer in her hand. She wore a gentle smile and held it out to Nabi. Kitty, do you want to eat? However, the other party was extremely proud and wouldn't eat food from a stranger. Hearing this, Unha's eyes went wide as she asked, Then let's be friends, kitty. This made Nabi a bit curious. Friends? And Unha couldn't help but ask, You don't want to? Hearing that, Nabi quickly showed extreme excitement. I have an earth friend. So happy. Then it accepted the skewer. Unha, I have a cat friend. Unha was also very happy. Nabi took it and happily ate every bite with gusto. It was so excited that it kept dancing and cheering. So yummy! Nabi used both its paws to hold the skewer high up. Does this chicken skewer have any secondary effects? She asked, leaving Unha a bit confused. Effects? Suddenly, Nabi fell into a state of panic. No effects? Right after saying that, Unha couldn't help herself. She reached up to gently scratch her face and said, Does tastes good count as an effect? Hearing that, Nabi's face immediately darkened, turning gloomy, its voice dropping. How can you call that cooking? As it ate, Nabi's entire body suddenly began to tremble uncontrollably. I'll turn into a chubby cat! As soon as it said that, Unha quickly reassured it. If you don't eat too much, you won't get fat. But the other party still refused, protesting fiercely. No way! Hearing that, Unha could only sigh helplessly. She began to bring up the adults in this situation. Mom said that restraint and focus are the most important things. Then, Unha didn't hesitate to take the cat's hand, speaking incredibly gently. If you eat too much of anything, it's bad for your body, but if you eat in moderation, it's fine. Hearing this, Nabi immediately held still to listen, while Unha continued, Besides, humans say experience is very important. You have to eat a lot of delicious food to study well. It helps you grow taller and improves your athletic ability, too. That made Nabi incredibly surprised, jumping up. Does good food really have that much of an effect? Unha kept explaining, and being a picky eater is really bad, too. Nabi was even more surprised. Picky eater? It immediately trembled, staring at the delicious meat skewer, its whole body shaking as it gulped loudly. After taking a big bite, Nabi couldn't help but exclaim, This is so delicious! The two of them immediately set off to try more food. Come on, kitty, let's head to the next spot. Go, go! The scene shifts to another building where Hwang Hyuk's brows are furrowed deep. That bald branch manager makes me so mad. Min, currently holding a cigarette, immediately warns him, "Watch your mouth. There are people listening, and that's dangerous." "Shut up." Hwang Hyuk leans against the railing, fuming. "Can't you see I'm trying to keep quiet?" He clutches his head with both hands, shouting, "The Chief of Staff is coming in person to confirm everything. Are you serious?" Restoring damage in Sector A, checking the cracks in the sewage system. As the list goes on, Min sighs helplessly. High-ranking officials are visiting. Even the military is getting exhausted. Before he can finish, Hwang Hyuk cuts in. "I mean, are you talking about the Chief of Staff of the World Hunter Association? Is that rumor actually true?" Mine feels the tension rising, adding, "I know, that's why everything has to be prepared perfectly." He crosses his arms, fuming. "Those bastards, I'm only in trouble because I got stuck in that sewage drain." Suddenly, Hwang Hyuk glances at the person in front of him. "Hey, you. Min, you're better at hunting and destroying, so let me handle this." Min takes his cigarette and replies, "I know it's better if I handle the investigation since you are better at terrain scouting to deal with unexpected situations." Suddenly, Hwang Hyuk can't hold back, tears welling up in frustration. "Everyone else is out on dates, watching movies on their day off, while I have to go on patrol." He suddenly opens his palm, using a technique to activate his concealment spell. Meanwhile, Mai leads a few others, urging them on. "Let's go, keep moving." Inside the pitch-black tunnel, only a few dim lights flicker. A figure slowly moves forward. Opposite them, a group of people in black coolly aim their guns at him. Mine narrows his eyes, his left hand brushing against his thigh. The space is pitch black, illuminated only by a few faint bulbs. Suddenly, the peaceful atmosphere is torn apart by a massive burst of power. The pistols clatter to the ground, and blood sprays from the bodies of the men in black. Meanwhile, Min, standing on the other side, furrows his brows and takes a combat stance. Seeing the trembling figures before him, he sneers, "These pests, they never end." Moments later, they are all bound in handcuffs. Min sighs with a glare, his eyes filled with rage. "These criminals blinded by greed. Do you have any idea how many people had to sacrifice themselves to maintain the civilized standards we have today?" His tone is icy cold as he assesses the situation. "I think this area is cleared out now. How many have we caught so far?" A soldier in full armor quickly reports, 13, sir." Min immediately clutches his forehead. "Oh, my head." After a moment, he pulls himself together. He turns back and commands, "Maintain the formation and keep moving forward." Back in the office, Jung-hoon keeps rubbing the back of his neck, sweat beading on his cheeks. He paces in a circle. "I don't know why, but I have such a bad feeling about this." Jung-hoon instinctively picks up a cup from his desk and takes a sip, his brows tightly knitted. Suddenly, the secretary bursts through the door. "Branch manager, the power is out!" Hearing this, Jung-hoon's eyes and mouth go wide in shock. "Power out? What do you mean? I already stationed people there." The secretary's voice remains panicked, face twisted. "During the raid on the criminal organization, Min's support team accidentally fired on the power facility and destroyed it." Jung-hoon immediately retorts, "If a little thing like that causes a blackout, the power would be out 365 days a year." The secretary looks even more terrified. How could this happen? Elsewhere, sparks of electricity dance around Hwang Hyuk's hands. He tilts his head back, feeling the intense energy surging through his body, and can't help but shout, "The power! The power is surging!" The scene shifts to Min, who seems a bit suspicious while on the phone. "I never expected anyone to be there. The lightning user is currently absorbing electricity to boost his power." On the other end of the line, Jung-hoon is incredibly shocked. "Really?" Min is deadly serious, though he's about to pass out from voltage overload. Back at the circuit area, Hwang Hyuk suddenly drops to his knees. He falls backward onto the cold ground, his hair standing straight up. "I'm toast." Elsewhere, inside a movie theater, Sung-gu is enjoying a film while snacking on popcorn, popping pieces into his mouth one by one. On screen, the heroine puts a hand to her chest, lamenting, "Do you know? I've been waiting for you for 200 years. Hearing this, the man doesn't hesitate to take her hand and reply, "I've also been searching for you for 200 years. The main character puts on a serious face just to say these words. Suddenly, he whips out a knife, his gaze turning icy cold. "I will kill you. You are my parents' enemy." Seeing this, Sung-gu can't help but shout, "What the hell is this?" At that exact moment, the screen goes completely black. This scene leaves Seunggu utterly baffled and stunned, while a staff member hurriedly bows low. My apologies, everyone. We cannot continue the screening due to a power outage. Hearing this, Seunggu gives a blank stare. You guys have got to be kidding me, right? He walks out of the theater, feeling deeply regretful. After more than 45 years of movie watching, and it was a sequel to a film he once loved too. Such a rare occurrence. Then Seunggu can't help but yell out, 2 lines of tears streaming down his face as he laments, "Oh God!" No sooner had he finished speaking than Flora snaps back, looking extremely annoyed. Ugh, so annoying. Just hearing this voice is already irritating. Meanwhile, Seunggu just sighs in frustration. I guess praying to the gods doesn't really help, huh? He then slowly walks into the house. He quickly opens the fridge and sees a mountain of food. Seunggu can't help but slam it shut, his hands trembling with rage. At least this part is outside the power outage zone. If these ingredients go bad, that would just be... This is when he shows a look of helplessness. Even though these are just minor annoyances, he stares off into the distance, thinking about how when many little things pile up, they can really stress us out. Suddenly, Seunggu swings the kitchen cabinet open, reasoning, at times like these, you've just got to eat to relieve the stress. After searching for a while, he holds an adorable penguin-shaped object in his hands. Seunggu cradles it with both hands. My penguin-shaped bingsu maker. I've missed this so much. Seunggu immediately places it on the wooden table, intending to make some bingsu since the weather is starting to get chilly. His heart fills with a flood of memories. Bingsu. For Koreans, bingsu usually means red bean bingsu. Red bean bingsu with jelly toppings and rice cakes on top of the red beans. Seunggu's eyes grow strangely distant. But the thing I remember most is, emotions suddenly well up, and sadness spreads through the air. The soju bingsu that his late grandfather used to eat, he had promised himself that when he grew up, he would definitely try it. He brings the object close to his eyes. I'm a grown-up now, aren't I? Seunggu moves his fist in a circular motion, a confident smile spreading across his face. All right, let's see how this goes. He tries to follow the preparation steps exactly. Adding sugar, using magic to thicken the milk, then putting it into the penguin bingsu machine. Seunggu slowly pours the other ingredients over the shaved ice, then drizzles a bit of condensed milk on top. At the same time, he slowly slices the strawberries in half. Seunggu glances at the pile of fruit on the kitchen table. This is the fruit Min gave me, right? Seeing them call me teacher and follow me around, it's really... Seunggu uses his nimble hands to decorate the top of the dish. He places the fruit on the bingsu, and then comes the most important part, the liquor. Suddenly, Seunggu reaches into a spatial rift. Let's see, which bottle of liquor should I use? The one the king gifted me, I suppose. A moment later, he pulls out a precious bottle. Liquor aged for 500 years. The taste is just perfection. Seunggu doesn't hesitate. He pours the red liquid over the shaved ice, then slowly takes a spoonful and tastes it. Seunggu folds his arms across his chest, savoring the fiery heat of the wine and the icy chill of the bingsu. They go so well together. It's like it's freezing up, but at the same time, it's melting in my mouth. He lets out a soft sigh, his mouth curving slightly. So this is what it tastes like. Seunggu doesn't hesitate to take another spoonful. The hot liquor burns away the stress, while the cool ice refreshes his spirit. Now I finally understand how Grandpa felt when he ate this. Suddenly, he instinctively turns his head to the side. I get it now. Does this mean I've finally become an adult? Just then, Nabi slowly walks in through the door. I'm home. Right behind her, Unha bows very politely. Excuse me, please. The well-mannered girl greets him. Hello, uncle. Since the power is out, may I please stay here for a while? Hearing this, the other person can't help but smile. Of course, no problem. Go ahead and rest. What a polite child. Then Seunggu slowly leans down to look at Unha. Even though it's a day off, you're a guest Nabi brought over. Do you two want something to eat? No sooner had he spoken than the girl and Nabi silently exchange glances. Then they both suddenly turn to look at Seunggu. He seems to realize they've been eyeing the machine, behind his back. Seunggu quickly pulls out a new bowl of shaved ice and turns the knob as the two young foodies watch. This time I won't add any liquor because you kids are still too young. By early the next morning, Min and Hang-hyuk are seen walking into the shop, holding hands. Seunggu looks at them and says quietly, Good morning. Min angrily drags Hang-hyuk along, complaining about the branch chief. Hang Hyuk looks like a dried-up corpse flopping onto the table, saying with his last breath, "Just forget about everything." Sungu looks at these two goofballs and just sighs. You guys are both crazy. After listening for a while, he strokes his chin thoughtfully. So, you heard about a high-ranking official coming to inspect and you went out and wiped out almost all the criminal organizations? Min and Hang Hyuk immediately start grabbing each other, bickering like two kids. You were just sitting at the scene, reaping the benefits. You didn't do anything. What's so funny about that? Down there in the underground, I wiped out all those weak organizations. You call that a lot of work? Sungu spoke up. If we followed the military protocols, we'd have to clear everything out when the division commander arrives. In the end, he didn't even show up. It's enough to make you mad. Hearing this, Min and Hang Hyuk shouted in unison, "Exactly, that's the point. What a ridiculous way to do business. And there are way more important things to deal with," Hang Hyuk said, trembling as if he were about to cry, pleading, "So please just feed me something delicious today. Forget about that fire-breathing steak of his." Sungu heard this and laughed helplessly, saying, "So all that rambling just meant you wanted food to calm your anger?" In the end, he just had to give in to this troublesome person. "Let's get right to work then, all right? I'll cook something really tasty today." Meanwhile, at the Space Rift Management Department, Pero, a beast man who fell to Earth after getting caught in a rift, was there when someone approached. Setting a whole stack of documents on the table, Pero looked up, a bit confused. Before him stood Ji Hyun. She quickly introduced herself. "I've received orders to assist the management department. The temporary rift division, right?" Pero replied with a thank you. Just then, Pero's stomach growled with a loud rumble from hunger. He dejectedly explained, "The food here on Earth, it just doesn't agree with me." Ji Hyun, standing opposite him, asked, "Is that so? Isn't it just because the work is too exhausting?" Pero shook his head vigorously and said, "Even if the work is hard, it's still meaningful." "It's nothing like that." Ji Hyun leaned in, slightly charmed by Pero. "I like your honesty. If only our Mr. Baekham Hyuk were even half as decent as you, it would be great." But Pero immediately defended him. "I think Mr. Baekham Hyuk is working very hard." Ji Hyun suddenly became worried and whispered a warning. "It's scary if he hears you saying that. You shouldn't praise him too much." Pero playfully balanced a pen on his nose and reiterated, "Anyway, it's not because the work is exhausting." Ji Hyun felt puzzled. It really seemed like the food was the problem. "Or is it because cooked food is hard to eat? Do you prefer raw food?" Pero finally revealed, "I've tried raw food too, but it still doesn't agree with me." Ji Hyun paced back and forth, appearing deep in thought. "As I thought, food from your hometown is what you need." Upon hearing that, Pero became quite gloomy. "A hometown. I don't even know its name." She hurriedly stroked Pero to comfort him. "You miss home, don't you?" He looked up at the sky and started crying. "I guess so." Ji Hyun continued to soothe him. "You've been working for 3 years now. You're a veteran employee." "It's really nothing." Suddenly she froze, having realized something. "Oh, wait." Ji Hyun handed a tissue to Pero to blow his nose and said, "If it's this person, they would definitely know." He wondered, "Who?" Meanwhile, at the apartment complex, the children were clinging to Pero, playing around. "Pero, let us hang on your head, please." He kindly cautioned the kids, "You can climb on if you want, but if you fall, you'll get hurt. Be careful, okay?" Suddenly, Pero noticed the building across the street. He gently set the children down on the ground and said, "That's it for today. Uncle has work to do now." Pero smiled and promised the little ones, "I'll come play tomorrow." They cheered excitedly. "Really?" The kids ran off, not forgetting to turn back and wave goodbye. "See you, Pero." Pero waved back, "Be careful on your way." Then he adjusted his glasses to see clearly. As it turned out, the place Pero had arrived at was the hunter's rice house. Someone was stepping out from inside the restaurant. Sungu greeted him first. "Mr. Pero, I've received your message." He sensed something was off and quickly said, "Sorry, I might be being a bit rude by saying this." Pero heard this and looked blank, not understanding what was rude at all. Sungu awkwardly said, "Mr. Pero, you can't come inside." Seeing that Pero was deeply hurt, he quickly explained, "It's not like that at all. It's just because of your fur, that's why." Pero felt relieved. "Oh, is that so? I misunderstood." By now, he was sitting out in the park, looking around aimlessly. People saw this polar bear sitting out there. Everyone found it fascinating. "So cute. I wonder if he likes drinking Sting?" Pero perked up his ears and heard everything the humans were saying about him. You idiot, he probably likes salmon. Who drinks Sting? But he's a polar bear. He definitely likes Sting. Pero scratched his face, thinking to himself, I don't like drinking soda or sugar. Everyone keeps giving me those things, so I'm sick of them. But I do like salmon. Those two noticed Pero's demeanor and were absolutely delighted. So cute! Just then, Sung-gu arrived as well. He started the conversation. I heard from Ms. Ji-hyun that you're homesick, is that right? He answered, Yes, that's right. Pero sadly recounted, Lately I keep crying and I've been feeling so down. Sung-gu heard this and realized the problem. It was a classic sign of homesickness. There's really nothing anyone else can do about it. He turned away with such an ugly look on his face, and he still had the nerve to say he was curing his homesickness. Is this some kind of all-purpose therapy office? I'm sure Sung-gu can figure out a way to solve this. A common therapy method is cooking. I'll try making something myself. I don't think ingredients on Earth are that diverse, but Pero looked even more depressed, like he'd aged 10 years. Sung-gu scratched his head, remembering that in the world he used to live in, there were beastmen who were bears, but they weren't the same species as this Pero. The Uruk beastmen were warriors summoned to Terra from that world. The Uruk species are extremely fierce and violent, with a destructive temper. Nothing like the cute, teddy bear-looking Pero. Sung-gu concluded that this gentle and knowledgeable bear couldn't possibly be a member of the Uruk tribe. He stood up and headed into the house, not forgetting to turn back and tell Pero, Let's eat something first, then we can talk. A while later, Nabi brought out cart after cart of food. The first dish was phoenix feathers, the second was 1,000-year-old lingji leaves, and the last was dragon wings. Sung-gu looked at the mountain of food, thinking to himself that this should be enough. 3 hours later, he was slumped over, looking very serious. The 3-hour cooking session hadn't brought any excitement to Pero. Pero went from being depressed alone to having 2 new depressed friends to keep him company. So all 3 just sat there gloomily until dusk. Sung-gu sighed and spoke up first. I made so much food. But why don't you guys have any reaction? Pero apologized. I'm sorry. Sung-gu quickly explained, afraid he'd make it sadder. No need to apologize, I just find it strange. Sung-gu looked at the pile of dishes Pero had completely wiped clean and wondered, I should have at least gotten some feedback on one of these. Pero reminisced. Where I used to live was a small suburb. Then he looked up at the moon, and a wave of homesickness washed over him. He stood up, intending to leave since it was getting late. I've bothered you enough for today. Sung-gu politely replied, Not at all. I feel even worse that I couldn't help you. Nabi stepped forward and stretched. All right, time to exercise. Then it let out a meow that sounded as powerful as a tiger's roar, and Nabi threw thousands of punches into the air at the speed of light. Pero asked, confused, What is that cat doing? Sung-gu revealed, He's intentionally burning off some energy. He belongs to the Arapost warrior clan. Seeing how small and cute the cat was, Pero was puzzled. A warrior? He looked so small and adorable. Sung-gu laughed, agreeing, You're right, aren't you? Nabi was still running around the yard, darting from place to place before finally leaping into the air, like a true master of martial arts from a moonlight world. Pero watched with a bit of envy. He looked so happy. Sung-gu seemed to guess his thoughts and suggested, You're often in pain, right? If you're okay with it, try running with Nabi. But Pero was quite insecure. I'm not sure. I only ever work and read books, so I don't know if I can run like him. Sung-gu was shocked to hear that. You've only worked and read books for the last 3 years? Don't you exercise? Pero scratched his head and asked. That's right. Is there a problem? I explained to him. Of course there is. Pero, you're a beastman. Sung-gu continued to enlighten him. No matter how much beastmen act like humans, you must never forget that half of you is a beast. If you forget your natural instincts, you'll get sick. Pero was terrified. Sick? Seeing his chance, Sung-gu pointed straight at him and scared him. The sickness is called weakness. That pot-belly of yours is proof of it. At this point, Pero was panting like a dog running in a field. It turned out Sung-gu had made him run laps around the yard. He wheezed, My gallbladder is about to fall out. He looked at the stopwatch and said, It hasn't even been 30 minutes yet. But Pero was so tired he was just sprawled out on the ground, asking wearily, Hey, does this actually work? Sung-gu replied, For a human it works. But since you're a beast man, doing just a little bit of exercise like this won't be very effective. Pero was speechless. Then why did you make me do it? Suddenly, Nabi pounced it out of nowhere and jumped onto him. Nabi pressed firmly on his stomach and said, "Don't move." Pero, face bright red, groaned, "This is so embarrassing." Nabi kept messing with his stomach and judged, "It's because you don't exercise that your belly is so soft. You're obese." Pero pleaded weakly, "Stop it!" Sungu walked over and revealed why Nabi was playing with his stomach. This is a secret massage technique of the Uruk-Pos tribe. It helps reduce fatigue and muscle soreness. Getting a massage after exercise helps burn fat twice as fast. Pero was very surprised. "It's that effective?" Seeing him like that, Sungu didn't know whether to be happy or sad. He didn't see a shred of wildness in him. He walked to the kitchen counter and muttered to himself, "Truly, only that dish will have the intended effect." The dish Sungu was about to make was Frensburg baby food. The Terra gladiator clan had passed down this baby food for generations. Gladiators are different from knights in that they consider winning a duel the most noble pursuit. If a family produced a child who didn't like to fight, it was practically the same as ending the bloodline. So back home, Frensburg fed the kid a special dish meant for children. It's supposed to boost energy and spark a competitive spirit. As an educator, I have to say, this method isn't exactly positive. Sungu smiled, quite satisfied. Learning this recipe wasn't a waste of time. The main ingredient was wild Fichidin beef, and he began prepping the fresh cut of thigh meat. The most important thing when cooking for kids is making sure it's actually edible for them. So, Sungu swung his knife, ready for the first step, mincing the meat. He hacked away at the beef at lightning speed, and in no time, that massive hunk of beef was reduced to a pile of mince. He sprinkled on the seasoning and started rolling the meat into perfectly even round meatballs, looking at them lined up on the plate. Left Sungu feeling very pleased. At this point, it's just a dish anyone could make. It's no longer some secret family recipe. Finally, he enchanted the dish with a spell. Lataris. This magic originated from the ice dragons. The basic premise of this spell is freezing, which maximizes the magical properties. Looking at the food glowing magically on the plate. Mada Sungwu happy. Perfect. By now, Pero had drifted off to sleep, drooling who knows when, so he rushed over to wake him up. "Pero hurry up and try this." He frantically wiped away a stream of drool and let out a grunt. Sungu thoughtfully added, "Drizzle on whichever sauce you like." Pero stared at the plate, looking delighted. "That looks delicious." "Thanks!" And just like that, he shoved the whole plate of meatballs into his mouth. Within seconds, only a few drops of sauce remained, which Pero licked clean too. Suddenly, his eyes snapped wide open. He clutched his mouth, sweat pouring off him as if he'd just eaten something lethal. Everything was going according to plan. Sungu quickly signaled Nabi, "Nabi, get ready, things are about to get fun." Pero just let out a few shrill growls. In the blink of an eye, he went from a cute, gentle polar bear to a ferocious beast, true to his wild nature. Pero let out a roar and pounded his chest with both hands just like a gorilla. Sungu pulled out a dummy and called out, "That's it, Pero, right here." Pero, looking like he'd lost his mind, charged straight at the dummy. Sungu watched, satisfied, clapping his hands. "Good, very good, just like that." "Nabi, get more ready." Nabi followed along, excited and eager. Meanwhile, Pero was frantically scanning the area for more targets, and all throughout that night, he smashed every single dummy in sight. The next morning, Jihyun was sitting alone, saying, "Pero is calling in sick today." Sungu reassured her, "He's of the Uruk tribe, he'll be fine. He'll be back on his feet in no time." Jihyun was a bit surprised. The Uruk tribe? When he revealed they were a famous warrior clan, she brightened up. "Thank you for helping him. Pero's just a bit sore, but he's sleeping soundly now," Jihyun said respectfully. "I don't know how to repay you." But Sungu replied, "No need, Pero has to pay me back." But Jihyun was a girl with a strong sense of responsibility. "No, I'm Pero's superior. If a subordinate owes someone, the superior has to pay." Hearing that, Sungu flashed a mischievous grin. "Is that so?" And he headed straight for the fridge, rummaging around for something. "So you're paying?" Jihyun was startled and asked, "Hey, restaurant owner, what are you doing in the fridge?" He pulled out a piece of meat and told her, "Don't worry, it's just food. The worst case is it won't taste good, it won't be any worse than that." She panicked. "You want me to eat what you fed him?" Terrified, Jihyun tried to slip away. "Wait, I'll pay some other way." But Sungu was already in the kitchen, casually saying, "Too late, I've already started cooking." Pero was probably back home recovering. while his heart yearned for the kids he used to play with. Sung-gu quickly started slicing vegetables, so fast and hard that his knife snapped. He stared at the dwarf's blade in confusion. "What the—" Nabi rushed over, asking what was wrong. Sung-gu sighed. "It's nothing. I just can't control my strength." He rummaged through his inventory to find a new one. This was just a normal knife, that's why it broke. Let's see. His inventory was filled with legendary swords but no kitchen knives, and he couldn't exactly use a holy sword or a demon sword to cook. Nabi climbed onto Sung-gu's shoulder and asked curiously, "Is that so? Is doing that considered rude?" He thought for a moment, snapped his fingers, and made a decision. "All right, I have to go buy a knife today." With that, he set off immediately. I debated whether to check the supermarket or the market, but they had limited options, so he thought, let's head to the blacksmith and see. Nabi was a bit surprised. "A blacksmith here too?" Sung-gu pointed at a passerby and explained, "Of course. But here people call them workshops, like that place that sells weapons over there." Eventually, the two of them stood in front of a building. "I think this is the place," he exclaimed. Sung-gu led Nabi inside, saying, "I have an invitation issued by the city hall right here." This was the Crypto Valley Workshop. By the entrance, a receptionist was already waiting to greet guests. With a warm, professional smile, she introduced herself. "I am SEO Nare." The guide, Sung-gu, took out the invitation and greeted her. "Hello, I'm Joe Sung-gu. Nice to meet you, Nair. I'm looking to buy a knife." Nair asked for clarification. "You mean a sword, right? Are you looking for a short sword or a long sword?" Sung-gu revealed, "No, I'm looking to buy a kitchen knife." She stood there, completely stunned. A kitchen knife? Thoughts of indignation raced through Nair's head. What is wrong with this guy? Does he have any idea where he is? While the first order wasn't exactly difficult, she reminded herself that the customer is king, so she kept a friendly, smiling exterior and replied politely, "I'm very sorry, but we don't have any kitchen knives at the moment. If what you need isn't among the swords on display, you'll have to place a custom order." Sung-gu replied, "In that case, we'll place a custom order." Nar kept a smile on her face, but she felt nothing but contempt inside. Spending over 100 million just like that? Just because he says so? He really has no clue. So she asked, "All right. Do you have a specific artisan in mind to handle your order?" Sung-gu replied, "I don't know anyone. Is there an artisan who is a dwarf or an elf?" Nara revealed there was an elven artisan, so he decided immediately, "Then I choose them." Afterward, she continued to guide them. "I understand. Please follow me to the elevator right this way." Inside the elevator, Nara pressed B25. Nabi looked dejected. "An elven artisan? I don't like them." Sung-gu wondered, "You don't? Is something the matter?" She revealed, "Elven weapons hate me." He sighed. "Well, even if that's true, there's nothing I can do about it. Dwarven artisans are picky about people, while elven artisans let the weapon choose the person." Nare bowed solemnly. "We have arrived. If you'll excuse me." Sung-gu and Nabi waved goodbye to her. As soon as they entered the workshop, Nabi started shivering. "It's so cold." He explained, "Elves use cold energy for metallurgy, not heat." Inside a room, they saw someone working diligently on a weapon with lightning speed. Sung-gu was very surprised. A female elf? Due to issues regarding power and physical strength, the Elven Blacksmithing Guild mostly only passed their trade down to sons. Just then, the female elf stopped and looked out at Sung-gu. The aura she exuded made him think, her talent seems exceptionally remarkable. The female elf hurriedly spoke first. "My apologies, I was too focused." Sung-gu replied, "It's my fault for showing up without an appointment, so it's fine." The female elf slammed the weapon she was forging onto the ground. She approached him and introduced herself. "I am Alistair." Sung-gu asked curiously, "I'm Joe Sung-gu, but isn't Alistair a boy's name?" Alistair revealed, "This is the name I was passed down." Sung-gu realized, so she is the head of the house. This woman seems more important than I thought. Alistair stretched her body and said, "First, before I take the order, I want to clarify a few things." She stated bluntly, "First, I don't care about your qualifications, but the little darlings I create, they are not like that." Alistair continued with her second requirement. "If my little darling doesn't choose you, I won't give you a refund, and I won't let you have the weapon either." Then she dropped a bombshell. "Third, I've been in Korea for 2 years, but no one has ever been chosen by my little darlings yet. Nabi, standing beside them, was furious. If they don't get chosen, what's the point of even talking? Alistair looked at her and warned, "It's exactly as that cat says. It's meaningless, so please think carefully before you place your order." But Sungu remained determined and replied, "I will." Alistair leaned closer and asked, "All right, then what would you like me to make?" He stated his request, "Please make me a kitchen knife. The size should be equivalent to a standard kitchen knife." She immediately pulled out a price list. "Not a weapon? Fine. It will take about an hour. The price will be around this much." Sungu happily agreed immediately. Nabi, however, saw the number of zeros and was completely shocked. Alistair picked up an iron rod, ready to work, when suddenly she suggested, "By the way, if you're free, you can stay and watch my little darlings." He quickly refused. "No, I won't watch. It'll be chaotic." Alistair laughed out loud at Sungu, teasing him. "Chaotic? Why? Are you planning to steal? Thieves have to be chosen too, you know. If you can, feel free to try." He felt a bit embarrassed and said, "That's enough." Alistair gripped his hand firmly and dragged him along. "All right, just watch." I was dragged away like a scarecrow, helpless. Why are blacksmiths all so strange? At this, she led them into the production room. Inside the room were filled with swords. "Gleaming and bright," Alistair bragged proudly. "These are my little darlings. They look spectacular, don't they?" As for Sungu, he was all too familiar with this scene. Everywhere he went, it looked the same. This was already the 6th or 7th time. You keep trying to cover your bases, so if something happens, let me say this first. I already refused, and I honestly didn't mean for that to happen. Alistair was baffled. Some mysterious force caused the blades on the wall to start shaking violently, and some even slammed against the table, making a loud racket. The swords were doing the same thing. 2 guns resting on the box also began to vibrate, then started spinning like pinwheels. Seeing his weapons moving on their own like that made Alistair panic and scream, "My babies!" Seonggu looked at the 2 guns on the table with great interest. It's not a fidget spinner, so why is it spinning so fast? Hearing that, Alistair felt her pride wounded and flew into a rage. "These are grade 6 weapons! This is my life's masterpiece and you're treating it like a toy?" Seonggu, helpless, reminded her. "I told you it would get chaotic." Flashback to 15 minutes ago at Terra. A blonde elf was carefully polishing a sword blade. "I'm really going to show you this now. I'm revealing it because it's the greatest masterpiece of my entire life." "How's that? Try touching it." But the elf's hand suddenly started trembling violently. The sword in his hand was pulled toward Seonggu automatically. A blue-haired elf sitting nearby saw this and mocked him. "Some masterpiece, that is, nothing special, right?" "It really was your work." The blonde elf could only punch the ground in frustration. The blue-haired elf just laughed at him, until the shield on his own arm was also sucked toward Seonggu. Seonggu said awkwardly, "They're a set, huh?" And this repeated 6 times. The elf warriors called the warrior Seonggu this, the item killer. And that's how it was. All of Alistair's weapons had gathered around Seonggu. She tried to cling to each sword, weeping and begging, "My little ones." "Look back at me. Can't you see this man isn't the one?" Alistair angrily pointed her finger straight at Seonggu, accusing him, "Is this 2-timing jerk really that great, huh?" Seonggu startled, shouting, "A 2-timing jerk?" He scratched his head helplessly. "This isn't my fault. I told you not to come in, didn't I?" Alistair desperately grabbed a sword that was about to fall into his hands. "He's not just seducing one, he's seducing all 88 of them," Seonggu angrily retorted. "Don't call it seducing. I told you I didn't do anything." She was so angry she was on the verge of tears, continuing her criticism. "You don't understand the heart of an elf." Seonggu felt like his ears were going to fall off. "I've heard that 7 times already." Alistair grabbed him and shook him back and forth, sobbing. "Do you have any idea how a mother feels when she has to marry off 88 children to one man?" Seonggu could only cry internally. "How would I know that?" She suddenly realized something was wrong and immediately questioned him. "Wait, did you say again? So how many elven artifacts do you own now?" He held up his fingers to count. "Let me see." The terrifying numbers were uttered. 100, 200, 300, roughly about 500, I guess. Hearing that, Alistair's entire worldview seemed to shift, and she shrieked, 500? She thought to herself, "My 88 beautiful children are going to be with someone who has 500 elven artifacts?" Alistair observed Seonggu's current appearance. Besides, he didn't even seem to be carrying anything usually. She frowned and came to a bold conclusion. So that's it. Alistair imagined the worst-case scenario for her precious babies. They're going to be thrown into a storage room, left in a corner, gathering dust, and never see the light of day again. She was outraged. My children were made with such devotion. Alistair continued to spiral. In a storage room for their whole lives, forever. Thinking of this prospect made her clutch her head. Pulling her hair in indignation, no sooner had she finished speaking than Alistair collapsed to the ground, fainted. Seonggu saw her like this and went blank. What do I do now? He dusted off his clothes a bit and muttered, but still, the law of the elves is to respect the equipment's decision. Seonggu looked at the pile of swords surrounding him and said nonchalantly, if I take them all, it's not even a crime. He picked up the first red sword, a blazing blade crafted from magic stone and fire spirit stone. The flames could prevent regeneration and had fire resistance properties. Very powerful. Next was the second weapon, a hammer that simply increased strength and amplified impact. Simple is best. The last one was the twin dragon cannon, the ultimate masterpiece. Alistair had poured all her time and passion for an entire year into making it. Seonggu studied the gun and calculated, someone around level 80 could use this, I suppose. Since the dungeon dwellers are only around level 20 to 30, it's difficult, but it's not enough for me to use. After that, he commanded the weapons like his own children. First, I will take responsibility for keeping you. But if you find a suitable master, I will hand you over immediately. Agreed? Once they were all lined up, Seonggu tucked each item into his inventory. Suddenly, his attention fell on a pair of gloves. The iron gauntlets were trembling. Seonggu realized something unusual. Not me? It's something behind me? Realizing the situation, he hurriedly called out, Nabi, come here. She was curious. Is something wrong? Seonggu pointed at the gloves and said, this little one is looking for you. Nabi ran over to the gloves in confusion. She stood in front of the item, still hesitant. Me? Seonggu cheered, congratulations! It recognizes you as its master. That's awesome. Nabi hugged the gloves tightly, so happy. So I finally have a weapon of my own now, huh? She put on the infinity gauntlet and struck a super cool pose. So Seonggu immediately snapped a whole photo shoot of Nabi posing with her new gear. Even though he was sad about losing his little babies, Alistair was still busy crafting a knife for Seonggu. I'm so annoyed that I have to make a kitchen knife for you people while my own children were swindled away. I could just die. But he just waved his hand with a wide, carefree grin and said, don't overreact like that. It's not like we're strangers now, right? Alistair irritably laid down the law. From now on, you're banned from entering my workshop. Seonggu asked curiously, all right. So how much longer is it going to take? She turned around and snapped, it's done right now. Immediately after, Alistair handed over a gleaming butcher knife. He took it, looking suspicious. Is this knife actually any good? She shot back. It's not like the others. It's a kitchen knife I made in just an hour. With mixed feelings, Seonggu stroked the blade a few times, satisfied. Alistair's name was even engraved on it. He smiled, feeling very content. Perfect. It's not too heavy. The weight is just right. I bet the flavor is going to be amazing, too. Seonggu gave a thumbs up toward Alistair and praised, great work. I don't know about the others, but I'll definitely put this one to good use. She shouted back, reminding him, you better put the others to good use, too. Seonggu recounted, I've already made arrangements with your other kids. If a suitable owner shows up, I'll hand them over. Hearing that, Alistair felt more at ease. That's better than letting them rot in storage, I get it. Then she wondered, but will a suitable owner even show up? I haven't met anyone in 2 years. Seonggu shrugged, calm as ever. There's always a way. The next day, at his restaurant, a sign hung by the door. Cruel Monster Food Challenge, Heroes Eatery. Finish the food within the time limit. And you'll be awarded master-crafted equipment, officially certified by ISAC. Note, only hunters are allowed to participate. Thanks to that sign, it attracted a ton of hunters. Unha hid behind a tree, eavesdropping. A lot more people than usual, huh? Nabi added from the side, yeah, it's because of the new menu. The little girl was curious. What's the first dish on the new menu? Unha spoke in a really confused tone. Monster food. I guess adults really like disgusting stuff, just like coffee. Nabi jumped, shouting, if the ball pops, I'm gonna hate it. The girl quickly reassured her, it's fine, it's a special ball. My mom asked me to keep it safe. This big summer ball is a toy meant for monsters. It was created at the request of hunters who treat their monsters like pets, kind of like those people who raise legendary creatures. It's durable and made from eco-friendly materials. Unha threw the ball hard and far for Nabi to chase. She caught it and hugged the ball tight. A loud bang echoed out. Nabi jumped in shock and shrieked, "It exploded!" Unha walked over, surprised. "That's weird. It shouldn't have popped even if a lion bit it." The girl suspected, "Is it a knockoff?" Meanwhile, on the high floor of a nearby building, a shadow was watching the two of them play. It was a mysterious guy in dark glasses. It turned out to be Sel Taiji, Unha's bodyguard, level 55 with a perception ability. Taiji analyzed the data through his glasses and gasped, "Level 80! Even I couldn't beat him," he silently judged. If so, the regressor is the owner of this pet. Suddenly, Seonggu looked straight up at Taiji and smiled. He panicked and stumbled back. Immediately, Taiji scrambled to hide, sitting flat on the ground, thinking to himself, "Even if I got spotted, I still have to pretend I'm hiding." But Taiji wondered, what on earth has he been cooking all this time? Just then, the yard at Seonggu's house was crowded with people. He picked up a Bluetooth microphone and started presenting. "Before the Monster Food Challenge begins, here are some notes," Seonggu continued, laying out the rules. "This challenge isn't about who eats the most. We only provide one adult-sized serving. So, we're letting you know in advance that the flavor will be beyond your imagination. There are 3 rounds. If you can't finish round 1, you can't move on to the next. The time limit is 30 minutes. Seonggu announced the prizes. If you complete the challenge, you will be awarded a work of art from a master certified by ISAC. He continued, "The entry fee is 100 million won per person. This money will be donated to the Disaster Relief Fund." Someone heard that and gasped, 100 million? That hunter looked skeptical. 100 million won for one meal? That's unbelievable. The gear after completing round 1. A sword glowing with elemental fire. Everyone stared at the sword, drooling. If you pay 100 million for this, it's basically like getting it for free. A few people laughed, looking down on him. Giving this challenge to hunters, huh? Looks like you're determined to go bankrupt. I heard you're a regressor, so you must have plenty of money. Looks like you're playing philanthropist, huh? A foot slowly stepped forward. The hunter from before chose a proper seat. He was Kim Jong-seok, the bodyguard. His ability was endurance, physical strength that increases based on mental power. Jang-seok boasted calmly, "I've got endurance." So he raised his hand and volunteered first. "I challenge round 1 of the Monster Food Challenge." Seonggu replied, "All right, okay." As he started cooking, he said into the mic, "Good luck to the first participant of the Monster Food Challenge. I'm starting to cook now." The sky suddenly turned gloomy. Seonggu looked up with a hint of worry. It looked like the rainy season was fast approaching. At that moment, he came up with the first dish, scallion pancakes paired with rice wine. Seonggu introduced the meal to everyone, saying, "This is a dish from my previous world. It's called gwaki," he said. Everyone was intrigued by the strange name. Seonggu explained, "In the language of that world, it roughly means, 'Look at this.'" Chansik asked curiously, "Why such a name?" Seonggu revealed, "It's simple. Once it's cooked, you can't take your eyes off it for 5 seconds. If you blink even for a second, it'll burn." The other hunters chimed in, guessing, "Is it like the traditional food from Tagazomi? Like Turkish food? Is it similar to a fried pancake?" Seonggu simplified his explanation. "In short, what I'm making right now is probably closest to a fried pancake or a fritter." He continued, "That's right. It's basically a fritter, but gwaki is a bit harder to swallow." Chansik pulled a skeptical face. "Is there any food as terrible as a fritter?" Seonggu clapped his hands together. "Bring it out!" Immediately, Nabi brought out a tray of ingredients. The history of cooking is a brutal history of research and consideration to make food taste better. But food in Terra is different. It's a history of making things taste not so good. Just then, the pancake was finished on the hot pan. The hunters smelled it and started to get hungry. "It's just a flour pancake, but that fried pancake actually looks pretty good. Being delicious is a crime. Being bland is a food's duty," Seonggu said with a grin. "Making a tasty dish taste bad proves a chef's true skill." Everyone stared blankly, wondering, what is he talking about? The golden, glistening pancake was ready. Seonggu quickly plated it and cheered, "It's done!" Chansik stared at the dish with his mouth agape, thinking, "Guac-eye, I'm actually kind of looking forward to this." With one hand holding the pancake and the other pouring wine, Chan-sik cheered, "All right, let's take a bite." He began to eat and drink with gusto. The other hunters watched him, curious. "Well, is it good? You've got to drink the wine, too." Suddenly, Chan-sik's face turned deathly pale. He froze, his whole body trembling like a leaf. The history of cooking is a process of making food taste better, accumulating the talent and experience of chefs. Once recognized as delicious, that recipe becomes someone's signature and is recorded in history. Fried flour pancakes and fritters are the same. Using 100% potato starch, true to the original recipe and filled with sincerity, is how you make a delicious pancake, Sung-gu said in a serious tone. But in Terra, it's completely different. He picked up 2 bowls of ingredients, used warm water to knead them, and used starch instead of potato. A chilling silence fell over the garden. A hunter asked in confusion, "Are you doing this on purpose to make it taste bad?" "Guac is exactly as expected. But what is starch?" Sung-gu explained, "This is starch from the Kongwell region. If I say it looks like a monster that looks like a tree, you guys would know, right? It's a monster with green sprouts growing all over its body." Then he dropped a bombshell. "Just like potato sprouts, it's poisonous." Chan-sik's mouth trembled, looking exactly like someone who had been poisoned. An angry hunter stood up and slammed the table. "If we eat that, we'll die." Sung-gu pointed at the withered-looking Chan-sik and said confidently, "I'm an expert. He won't die. Besides, if you add just the right amount, it helps build resistance to poison. This is a high-class ingredient." Someone else retorted immediately, "Just looking at him, he looks like he's about to die." Sung-gu continued to explain. "Also, the ingredient called malin, which I use in winter instead of scallions, is very good for the body. I mean, you just have to overcome the cold sensation in your body, that's all." But looking at Chan-sik, who was drooling profusely, Sung-gu thought to himself, "It seems he can't handle it." But he felt it was worth it. Guaki is already the 3rd dish in Terra. Sung-gu wondered, what if I fed this to customers from the very beginning? The restaurant would probably turn into a funeral home. He smiled slyly, cooking up some kind of scheme. He recalled meeting Ji-hyun before. She had asked blankly, "Are you telling me to eat this?" Sung-gu and Nabi brought out 4 fresh dishes. "That's right." Ji-hyun looked at the pile of pancakes on the table with fear. Just as expected, she took one bite and collapsed, unconscious. Sung-gu stood there, watching her in confusion. Let's see how much is okay. Let's see how she reacts. And whether it affects her health. In the present, he was completely confident he had experimented thoroughly. This dish is only for 1 star or below. Guac fights off toxins. Chan-sik was sweating profusely, trembling like a leaf. He struggled to pick up a piece of the pancake. Suddenly, Chan-sik collapsed onto the table, moaning in pain. "I surrender. The talented defender, Kim Chan-sik, has been defeated." The other hunters swarmed around him, asking, "What's going on? Tell us!" Seeing that person from the Trangsich clan meddling with the soy sauce just makes people even more confused about what's going on with it. I only saw him trace a few characters on the table, like a final message. This dish doesn't belong to this world. The other hunters watched that and turned pale. What on earth does it taste like, anyway? It looked edible enough to me. But another hunter, full of confidence, sat down in the chair and volunteered, "I'll be next." Before long, all the hunters were seen lying scattered across the yard. Seong-gu, meanwhile, was busy with something else. Little Unha's piggy bank was almost full. He calmly remarked, "Is that so? The customers aren't full, but the piggy bank has definitely puffed up." Looking at that crowd of people lying around like zombies made Seong-gu a bit disappointed. In the end, no one won today, he sighed, feeling bored. "I put so much effort into cooking an antitoxin dish, too." Antitoxin. No matter how strong you are, there are still many cases where you get poisoned, just like the demon realm, the final destination for explorers and heroes. Even the air itself is a toxic environment. That's why explorers and heroes consider getting an antitoxin skill their top priority, Seong-gu revealed while dragging the bodies away one by one. But on Earth, it's rare to find people with the ability to resist toxins, he explained. Since science and technology have advanced, people just wear gas masks. Seong-gu grew irritated and went on a long rant. "If you put it on too late, you're still dead. What if you're attacked by surprise? What if it breaks? If it's a gas mask that can't stop the poison, there's no other strategy left. In my day, if we discovered poisonous water, I would have just taken a bath in it." Unha, standing nearby, looked completely lost, not understanding a word. Then she offered her own opinion. Well then, don't you just have to make it taste good? Seong-gu sat down and replied slowly, that's not such a simple problem. He explained that the less tasty it is, the better the effect on the body. The level of grossness and effectiveness are directly proportional. And so Seong-gu took the little girl inside the house. The problem was quite complicated for Eunha. If you want me to explain it, it's going to take quite a while. But Eunha was actually interested in the matter. It sounds interesting. Tell me, tell me. He put the backpack on her and said, it's already late. You have to go home now. Inwardly, he was suspicious. What if she's using this as an excuse to play with the cat longer? So cute! Eunha pouted and stuck her tongue out to tease Seong-gu. Suddenly, the shop door slowly opened, and Taiji pointed at the clock to signal that it was time for Eunha to go home. The little girl pleaded pettishly, Taiji oppa, can't I stay any longer? He wondered, what's the matter? Eunha stomped her feet in a tantrum. If I stay a little longer, the kitty will be done with its bath and come out. She explained the reason. The kitty's front paws are so warm right after a bath I can't leave yet. Taiji pulled up his sleeve to check his watch, then said, all right, wait another 30 minutes then. Eunha clapped her hands in joy. Really? After that, Taiji also went into the restaurant to wait with her. He observed Seong-gu and thought to himself, the regressor's diner, huh? As long as I keep my guard up for 30 minutes, I'll be safe. Taiji's attention fell back onto the flyer for the special food challenge. Suddenly feeling inspired, he asked Seong-gu, sorry, even though you've closed up, can I still participate in the challenge? Seong-gu smiled and replied, sure thing. I always welcome everyone to the challenge, he said, noting that the earlier customers had already left. Now, only Taiji was left to participate. He handed over a form with his personal information. Seong-gu glanced at it, smiled, and said, looks like you're only in your 20s. We can talk comfortably, right? Taiji nodded. Yeah, that's fine. He then froze when he read a line written on the form. Taiji sighed and began to explain beforehand, I don't know what you're thinking, but I have no connection to that artist. Seong-gu, while stuffing the form into the piggy bank, said, sorry, you heard all of that? But Taiji just calmly replied, I'm used to living like this. I'm sick of hearing it, and besides, I've never even listened to any of that person's songs. He started preparing the dish, thinking to himself, never heard that music? Is this a generational gap? After it was ready, Seong-gu placed the plate of food in front of him. Taiji looked at it and assessed it for a moment. If something happens after eating this, it won't be good. Seong-gu stood with his arms crossed and asked, let me ask you one thing. Why do you want to eat what I cook? He simply replied, because it's necessary. Taiji looked down at the dish in silence, deep in thought for a moment. He picked up his chopsticks and explained, in order to increase my antitoxin resistance, I've tasted many different kinds of things. Seong-gu smiled upon hearing that. That's a good habit. You're quite sharp. Taiji continued telling a story. My instructor always emphasized one thing. I had to increase my antitoxin resistance as fast as possible, but a year has passed and I haven't seen any major results. Hearing this, he mused a bit. That's too slow. If your abilities haven't improved in a year, it seems you don't have the knack for it. Taiji put his chopsticks down. Either the food is low dose. Before preparing to eat, he poured himself a glass of water. Strong toxins will hinder the defensive process, but the owner's dish has such strong toxicity, yet it looks so safe. That's why I can't let this opportunity slip by, he said. He started breaking the food into smaller pieces, and Taiji was surprised to hear that. Following Taiji's lead, he lifted a spoonful of food to his mouth, saying, I'm going to enjoy this. Once he put it in his mouth, Taiji chewed it under Taiji's watchful gaze and finally swallowed it. And in that very moment, Taiji's face had been blank at first, but just a few seconds later he went pale. All his energy seemed to be drained away by that plate of food. Just like the other participants, Taiji looked down at the plate, which was still full, and muttered with a tremble, this is insane. The attack power is just too strong. Why on earth is this dish so incredibly aggressive? Taiji's expression grew serious as he struggled to find a way to keep eating. I was right. I have to stay calm. I need to find a way. Let me analyze this dish. Staring down at the plate, he started thinking, the portion isn't large, which is why everyone else tried to gulp it down in one spoonful. Taiji broke into a cold sweat, forcing himself to look at the situation from a different angle. If I keep going like this, it won't work. Don't think of it as food. Think of it as being attacked. My defense is 3. Let's assume the attack power of this fried dish is 100. Would it be better to take one big hit? Or would taking 10 smaller hits be better? Of course, 10 hits are better. If I take 1 hit, my defense of 3 reduces the damage to 97. But if I split it into 10 hits, each one will only deal 7 damage. The total damage would be 70. I can't finish this in one go. I have to chew thoroughly and make the most of the time limit. With that thought, Taiji grabbed another mouthful, and immediately after, he had to struggle hard just to swallow that bite. Seeing this, Sungu smiled and whispered to himself, "That's right. That's the answer. This kid has potential." Sungu stood there looking refreshed, giving Taiji a 30-minute time limit, the process of tormenting the stomach and draining the body to gain poison resistance. That's the true essence of this dish. While Taiji sat in his chair being tortured by that monstrous meal, Sungu chuckled inwardly, thinking with a sinister delight that if he told him the truth, it wouldn't be fun anymore, so he had stayed silent. Back at the house, Unha was drying Nabi's fur and remarked, "Taiji has really become an adult now. He actually likes eating bad food." Nabi let out a meow in agreement. Taiji kept pushing through, taking another bite, maintaining that steady pace. He had finally finished the whole plate of food. Sungu clapped happily, praising him. "Congratulations, you did great." Both Unha and Nabi were also impressed. Taiji proudly replied, "It was nothing, thank you. It's all thanks to you that I've acquired this skill." After completing the challenge, a notification appeared on Taiji's phone. Poison resistance skill acquired. Overjoyed, he stood up, glowing with excitement, and clenched his fists. "Amazing!" Taiji felt a little embarrassed, whispering to himself, "So this is what it feels like to actually enjoy a good meal? If he heard me, would he laugh?" True to his promise, Sungu reached his hand into the portal. "I'll give you your reward. Let's see. You don't use a sword, do you?" Taiji was a bit nervous about what he would receive. "I mainly use my hands to fight. Is that okay for a sword?" Looking behind him, Taiji spotted a rare sword resting there. He pointed at it in surprise. "Isn't that Alistair's flaming sword?" He remembered being kicked out before precisely because of that flaming sword. It had a 0% drop rate. Even though he had tried for the blade, he couldn't get it. Sungu turned back with a smile and replied, "No, don't worry. We already discussed this, didn't we?" This surprised Taiji. "We can discuss this?" Sungu chuckled and began to explain briefly. "To put it simply, it's like this. If you want to marry the princess, you have to pass the trials. When a hero wants to propose to a princess, she always says this. The princess always sets a condition. If you want to marry me, you must capture the dragon behind the mountain and cut off its head." "And just like that," Sungu said, drawing a parallel, "this is your marriage trial. Overcoming the trial and getting married. Isn't that the classic happy ending?" Taiji pointed at himself, confused. "So the equipment is the princess, and I'm the hero?" Sungu replied, "You catch on fast." Sungu held up the plate Taiji had just finished. "Eating the food I cook counts as your trial." Realizing his intentions, Taiji immediately tried to refuse. "This trial is too horrible. I don't want to do it anymore." Sungu pointed at the portal and warned, "Don't forget, today was only trial number 1. I promised to give these items to whoever finished all the food, didn't I?" Curious, Taiji looked into the portal. "Is that so? If that's the case, do you have that item? I dueled for it before, but got rejected." A moment later, Sungu handed him a special belt. "This is it, right?" Taiji immediately hugged it to his chest, his eyes sparkling. "Yes, exactly!" He stroked the belt. "Magic armor. If you recite the incantation, the belt expands and covers your whole body. The biggest advantage is that you don't need to carry a bag that's both dirty and heavy just to hold your armor." Taiji couldn't stop praising it, thinking about how he could protect Unha. "I couldn't have prepared armor like this on my own." "I know. If you want to gear up quickly, this armor is your best bet." Seeing how excited she was, Sungu felt happy too. "If you like it, then I'm happy." Though he only showed a faint smile, inside he was as giddy as a child. While the two were talking, Nabi dozed off next to Unha. Then, an idea crossed her mind. It had been over 30 minutes already. If things went well, they could just sleep here. Unha immediately put her plan into action, lying down to cuddle with Nabi while thinking to herself, "Good night, everyone." When Sungu looked over, he saw Unha was already asleep. Sungu smiled warmly as he watched them. He leaned down and whispered, "Unha," but she didn't answer. Unha had already drifted into a deep sleep, leaving Sungu to mutter to himself, "I'm going to get scolded for this." In the end, Sungu had no choice but to carry her home. The next day, Under the pouring rain, Sungu stood inside the restaurant, silently watching everyone attempt the food challenge for the second day. Everyone hugged each other and shouted in unison. "Is everyone ready? Let's win this eating contest, let's go!" A participant held up a bag of sauce, shouting, "Super spicy chili sauce!" The 15 people facing the Food Monster Challenge showed off the gear they had layered on. Sungu sized them up slightly. "So you've all dressed up nice and thick for this, haven't you?" The participant grinned, waving the chili sauce bottle in front of him. "We're going to win this time." "Is it considered cheating if you use tricks?" Sungu calmly wiped his pan and replied, "It doesn't matter. Unless it's a performance enhancer, that would be a different story." He pointed at the sauce bottle. "That's not a performance enhancer, is it?" With that, he signaled to everyone, "All right, team, go ahead. Let's numb those taste buds." They all started chugging the chili sauce frantically. Soon they were wailing as the heat kicked in. "So spicy." Sungu only then realized, "Wait, it's just chili sauce?" "It's not a drug, so it's not against the rules." After finishing their preparations, they sat down. "Let's do this. Fight." Watching them fired up and bursting with energy, he felt a bit hesitant and spoke up. "I know you want to get stronger, but this is a bit..." But just seconds after taking a bite, their spirit vanished entirely. Their faces turned ghostly pale. Their stomachs started churning loudly. One by one, they staggered away, pushing each other. "Move it! Hey, Sangjun, don't just stand there! Get out of the way!" The female participants were shaking, hugging themselves. "So cold. Freezing cold to the bone. Is this a cheap heat pack or something?" One person in the same state explained. "Because this is magical frost." While everyone was struggling, Sungu was idly counting his earnings. Business is actually going pretty well. The front door opened midway. It was Unha, who had braved the rain with her raincoat and umbrella. "Hello, uncle." He greeted her back cheerfully. "Oh, Unha, you're here?" Nabi's eyes lit up upon seeing her friend. She ran over and reached out to Unha. Sungu, on the other hand, was busy helping carry out those who had fainted. "Just a heads up, I'm cleaning up right now, so feel free to play as you like." Meanwhile, at OTX's cafe, the two owners were glued to the window watching the scene across the street. "Did you hear that, boss?" "Of course, Boss Park, that's Boss Doe's restaurant." "Right?" Looking over at Sungu's shop, they saw many customers leaving. After getting a look, Dansu and Tisik started whispering to each other. "They're averaging 100 million per person, right?" They got angrier the more they thought about it. "That's so vicious!" "Exactly, it's unbelievable." Tisik was fuming, steam practically coming out of his nose as he gritted his teeth. "Hunters paying 100 million just to participate in eating that terrible food? Does that make any sense?" Dance was equally outraged and couldn't fathom it. "Seriously, throwing away 100 million just to challenge a meal? Is 100 million just scrap paper to them?" Then the two of them turned to argue with each other. "That's exactly what I wanted to say. Do you know how many coffees that 100 million could buy? It's the same for my restaurant too. On top of that, after deducting labor, ingredient, marketing, and hospitality costs, there's nothing left." Watching the two owners make a scene and gossip like that, the employee at the counter felt embarrassed. Those old men are back to their lecturing again. Dansu's eyes widened as he gritted his teeth, looking dead serious. "Running a business like that? There have already been 35 people in that shop today and yesterday. That's 3.5 billion. The two sat down together, still complaining incessantly. "It's so absurd. All of that money went straight into his pocket." "Right, can we frame him for fraud? Stop making a scene and start whispering your scams. That's a bit tricky, don't you think?" "What about the food safety laws?" "The food safety laws? You two just keep giggling like that. Look, I know a sharp lawyer. We need to plan this perfectly. I have a contact over at the food safety department. I'll try to get him to do an emergency inspection." Meanwhile, the employee is still focused on her shift. "Here is your iced Americano, sir." She's already thinking of how to turn her ideas into action, and she told him to make sure he's done for. Txik chuckled wickedly, continuing to scheme. "And let's make sure the food is completely inedible. The cooking part sounds like it's right up your alley, doesn't it?" The two of them smirked evilly at each other. "We'll announce the event, offer a huge prize, and set the entry fee at 100 million, all under the guise of a donation." With those plans, they burst into loud laughter, shouting, "We're going to be rich!" Dansu and Txik began to lose themselves in fantasies about the future. "This isn't a casino, it's completely legal. Yeah, we'll just sit back and collect the cash. Those stupid hunters will fall for it hook, line, and sinker." Their dreams were suddenly shattered when a stranger in a hooded cloak stood in front of their table. It was Min, who was in disguise to scout the area and happened to overhear the whole thing. With a dark expression, Min grabbed them by their heads and pulled them down. "I need to clear up a little misunderstanding." They started trembling uncontrollably as Min leaned in close, his face turning grim. "First off, that restaurant is registered as a training facility under the law. Specifically, it provides food to hunters under the premise of survival training. Therefore, it has absolutely nothing to do with food safety regulations." He shoved their faces together until their noses were touching. "Second, as hunters, in cases of emergency, it doesn't matter if it's trash or monster meat, we can eat anything. Even if you serve up a pile of garbage, we can still eat it all. So guess what? You two are going to go broke."